So, how do I want to show this first? Well, let me start right at the beginning. So, the idea for this sequence is I took this, or I created this idea based on a different type of shot creation method that we don't usually talk about on the streams here, or I don't even know if I've actually mentioned it, which is I love reading books. I absolutely adore reading books. They're one of my favorite things it's one of my favorite things to do in my free time. And what I love about books is that it's a beautiful way of creating shot ideas. You read a story and go, oh, that's a really neat moment. I wonder if I could animate that. And you take that and you try to restructure it into a shot. I do this a lot on my free time. I shouldn't say a lot. I haven't had time to do it that much lately. But I'll just take a section of a book. I'm reading a book. I go, ooh, this is a really neat moment. I really kind of see that in my head. And I'll take it. And in this case, I got this section here, which was just a bit about a story. It's basically two characters having a very subtle interaction. Now, I don't know how well if this is easy to read on screen, but what really captured me with this was that it's two characters who are barely interacting. So let me actually give the summary here. It's one character who's kind of feeling sad and lonely, kind of end of a long shift. They're waiting to go home, just kind of sitting there alone. And as they're sitting there, they get a phone call or a text on their phone. They pull out their phone, and it's a coworker who's working a few aisles down there in a grocery store, who just texts them saying that they look sad. They're checking in on them. And it evolves into this little conversation that these two characters are having in the same location but on their phone. So they're not talking, they're just texting each other, and it's all kind of internal dialogue. So it's this very subtle shot dealing with the subtleties of emotion. Now, the other thing with these, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, is the exploration of two characters that are very similar but very different in their approaches of, I guess you could say, social anxiety. Both of these characters are not people. They don't talk very much with others, but they approach it in a different way. So, what does that give me? Well, as an animator, that's a really cool challenge. How can I take a shot and have two characters that are not talking? There's no lip sync or anything like that, but I need to get these clear emotions through. How do I get that to work? How do I tell this story in a way that I get all the subtext that you can get out of a book? The beautiful thing about a book is that it's a narrative. We can explain everything that's happening in someone's head, every thought that they're having, every little bit of happiness, every spike of sadness, everything that's happening, every thought. How do you translate that into film on screen? Unless you have a narrator talking over the shot, or the character talking in their own head, giving a monologue, which wouldn't really work. How do you sell that? And this is, again, a fun challenge I like to do. And it doesn't have to be subtle shots. It could be big action shots, anything like that. How can I translate that into animation and still get as much of that subtlety as possible? I enjoy much more the subtle kind of story than epic battles. I love both. I feel I'm better at subtle stuff just personally as an animator. For some reason, it works in my brain better. But I also have another shot that I'm planning similar to this, that is a full action sequence. And that one I'm going to be storyboarding for a whole group of people. And I hope it's going to work out well. I've got it kind of roiling around in my brain, but I still have to just board it out. So I've got all of this. Great. I copy this out of the book, put it into here. Now the goal is, how do we plan this out to make it work? Now this also works if you're doing a lip sync shot. So you've got your dialogue shot. So maybe, for example, you're in class 4 or 5 of Animation Mentor or whatever animation school you're in. You've got your dialogue shot. You write it out. You write out your story that you want to tell. All of this still applies if you're just doing a shot based on something in your imagination and you're not taking a lip sync or a piece of dialogue, or you're not taking something from a book in this case. You're just creating your own shot. Same thing. You write out the synopsis, write out what happens, and then you can start approaching it a little bit more clearly because you've got the main layout done. So I need to start approaching this. I need to prep this for animation. Well, the first thing I need to do is, at least for me, my first thought here was I need to know what shots I have. How many shots am I going to deal with? How am I going to lay this out in a way that works well? So the first thing I did was I rewrote this line of dialogue, or I should say these paragraphs here, and I rewrote it like a script. So I wrote it like this. So exterior store night 3 a.m. and I simplified a lot of the text, so don't need as many descriptors. So that's shot 1. Then it cuts to interior store, full 3 shot. So for anyone who doesn't know, a full 3 shot is a full shot. That means from foot to top of the head, and it's a 3 shot. There's 3 people in here. There's, I believe it was Ellie and Grace in the background, and then the main character sitting on the self-checkout aisle. So you've got that full 3 shot. 3 people. Okay. They're talking. Now, we've got all of that. Perfect. Now we have to cut. So she gets the message, sees who it is, and she starts looking around. And then she spots the other person. Okay. We cut again to show the other person. So this is going to be a wide 2 shot. So I start planning this out. Now, if you're curious about all of this terminology of shots, I've shown this on stream before. Studio Binder has this amazing page just filled with camera shots, and like, you want to learn about cameras, just check this out. It'll teach you everything you need to know about the different types of shots that you can use. So you can see here a full shot from foot to head, and then we went to a medium shot, which is hips to the top of the head. It's like you're creating kind of script. Exactly. It's a screenplay. Now, if you're interested in learning how to do screenplays like this, how to format it, there's 2 things I would recommend. First of all, Studio Binder once again. Here is a page that is all about how to write out a script. Everything you need to know. Why are you writing it in this certain way? Why are there indents in certain places? What's the point of all of this terminology? You can see right there. So that's a great resource. The next thing is, you don't need a special program to write all of this out. You can do this in any text editor, and you can do this using the fountain method here. So the fountain method is a specific type of formatting that you can use in storyboarding programs, but you don't need to actually have a storyboarding or a screenwriting software to do it. It's just using different indentations and caps in certain areas. Is kind of like writing script, but like Python or C++ or something like that. But it's just for script writing. And this is what I did here, is I just formatted in this way so that any program that allows storyboarding, which I'll go into in just a little bit, you can import this in and it'll bring it in for you, which is really cool. And Roger, thank you so much for the sub. Aw, thank you so much. 9 months, jeez, thank you so much. So I rewrote the script like this, and I kind of thought out of my I started thinking of the cameras. Now, this was not the final, like, when I did all of these camera things, this is not my first draft. This is like the 5th or 6th. I changed the cameras a lot. But my first draft was really just finding out where I wanted the cuts to be in this story. And in my case, it was easy because the story kind of tells me where the cuts are. If I'm creating my own shot, for example, just using a line of dialogue or just creating my own idea, you have to think of when the cut is going to be most beneficial. When switching to another view is going to help tell the audience something. Now, this is the important part. When you are thinking of cuts, you are cutting for a reason. You are not cutting just for the sake of moving the camera. So for example, if I'm talking and this is my camera right here, talking, explaining something, and I'm continuing the explanation, nothing's changed, and then suddenly I cut to another angle here, and I'm still going. Why was there a cut there? Why did I change a camera angle when nothing in the story has changed? Nothing in the character's presentation has changed. Do I need a cut there? Maybe. Maybe it's there to add confusion. If you move the camera around a lot, it makes things feel confusing. You're jumping around the scene a lot. But do I want this moment to feel confusing to the audience? This is where you have to ask yourself that question. What do I want the audience to feel right now? And this is kind of the key to any camera work, is that you have to ask yourself what you want the character, or what you want the audience to feel or see or experience. So I just created this kind of basic setup here. Okay, great. What was the next step? Well, I kind of had a general goal of what I had in mind here. So I knew what I wanted in general. Now I need to storyboard it. And for me, storyboarding, I do this there's all sorts of different orders you can do it. You can jump into storyboarding right away or figure out your characters right away. For me, I really wanted to figure out what cameras I should use and what angles they should be, how close, how far. That was kind of the goal of this exercise, is to get really good camera work. So that's what I jumped into first. Now, what I did was I took the script and then I opened Storyboarder, which is a free program. Here's the link for anyone who wants to use it. It's really cool, it's free, and I just imported the script that I wrote. And you can see, as I imported it, on the left side here, look at that. We can see Scene 1, Exterior Store, Night. Whoa, look at that. Exterior Store, Night. Look at that. Scene 2, Interior Store, Full Shot 3. Ooh, it imported all of this for me. Yay. It took all that information and laid it out into all my different shots. Not only that, it's still connected. So if I want this to be maybe a 4-shot, 4 people in here, I can save this and it'll update in here. Let it think about it for a little bit, but then that'll update there, which is great. Then did I freeze it? Oh, there you go. So there you go, full 4-shot. Yes. And it's free, which is fantastic. I will say the drawing tools in it are a little rough, but honestly, you don't want good drawing tools in a storyboarding piece of software. And that music is really loud today. Let me tone that down. I just saw the levels in there. So that makes it a whole lot easier to kind of make quick changes and update things on both sides. You can update your screenplay, bring it in, and it keeps everything connected. Great. It also makes it easy to organize. So, for example, we've got, where's my mouse? There it is. My tablet just stopped working for a second there. Where are you? Oh wait, I know why. Because this error message came up. Okay, there we go. And then all the drawings I did come up. So, I'm a download. Yes, download it. So, what I love about this, so we have the scenes. Then we have the description. It's late. The open sign is off, but there are still lights on in the store. Let's go to our next shot. Boop. Now, I've already laid this out. When you first started, it's all just going to be empty and blank here. So, interior store, full 3-shot. We've got Amy and then 2 other people. I could have put their names, but they're going to be background people. Okay, then we've got all of our description. Great, perfect. That means instead of having to bounce back and forth between programs, I have everything I need for this scene. Amy is perched atop a self-checkout aisle. She was tired, ready to go home and lie around in bed. So she's perched on top of this thing. Great. I have everything I need to start drawing this out. But I'm not very good at drawing. I'm okay at drawing. But to draw angles and perspective and 3 characters in a shot and try to piece it in my head in a way that makes sense? No, I'm not good at that. How do I start this? Do I just start doodling? Okay, I've got a character over here. Now, one thing I do love about this, kind of little side note, you've got all these grid options. So, rule of thirds. Okay, there we go. I want my main character to be around here. Okay, and I can start to draw things out. Once again, I'm not really good at that though. Especially coming up with a scene that has depth and just some more visual interest. So, what do I do? Well, this program has a really cool feature called the shot generator right in here. If you click on this will open up this really cool little feature that allows you to generate a basic shot idea. So, for example, we've got our camera, which also has the lens length in there. So here it is right down here. And let me make this a little smaller so everyone can see all the features. Okay, cool. So we've got this. Let's lay out our scene. So we know this is a 3-person shot and one of the characters is sitting down. This is Screenboarder, which is a free program. Oop. There you go. Or sorry, Storyboarder. So we need 3 people in here. Oh, look at that little person. Hit a plus. Ah, there's our person. And there's all sorts of little presets. So the first character is actually like a young adult. I wouldn't say a teen, but younger adult. So we'll put that as a teen female. Okay. Let's add another person. And we'll just have an adult male and adult female, just for the sake of variety. There we go. Interesting. Well, let's lay them out. So you can just drag and drop here. And let's put the 2 characters in the back, maybe over here. Other character right there. Now, again, you can bring in your layout. So where is it here? Camera, I believe. So let's open up our... Where am I looking for? Okay. So we've got this. Can I pan the editor? Yes. So you can move the camera. You can do all of this, which is really nice. So we've got this set up. Now, you can pose these characters just by dragging their arms and whatnot. But there's also this cool posing tool, which is basically just a whole bunch of different poses that you can bring into your scene. So maybe I want this character, you just click on them, and then, okay, maybe this more bride pose, or maybe she's carrying a box, carrying a bag. So I can just get some quick poses. This is not a tool for creating a final animation or final poses. It's just to kind of create placeholders. Why would we need Maya for? To actually animate and to create actual good poses. This is just placeholders. So we can put all of this in and start laying things out. So maybe these 2 characters are talking with each other over here. Okay. I can start creating that layout. Now, what else can I start doing? Well, let's start asking ourselves our questions. What's the scene again? Well, we've got it right here. So Amy is perched atop a self-checkout aisle. She was tired, ready to go home and lie around in bed for the rest of the day. She's lonely, she's tired, she doesn't want to deal with these other people. So, this is where you have to start thinking of the screen language. How do you want to tell the story? And we have so many variations of this. We can make a close-up shot so that it's focused on her, the characters in the back. We could go low angle, high angle, so many choices. It's really up to you. But it's asking those questions. So for example, I want her to feel lonely, which means I want these people to feel far away from her. How can I do that? Well, I can either move them way away like this, which could work, but then if you think of the layout of the store and I had like shelving and stuff in there, that's a big store. They're supposed to be in a little convenience store. So they can't be too far. But again, I don't want them too close to the character. Well, this is where your lens length can come in. If I make the lens length smaller, so maybe let's say a 20mm lens, that makes things look further away the further they are, and closer, you get this bigger distortion in the lens. So one thing looks very small, one thing looks very, very big. So this would be a way to change that size. Okay, so let's bring that camera in a little bit, because we want this to be a full shot of her. So full shot. And now you can see they look much smaller. So this makes her look kind of further away from them. They're still not that far, but we get that dynamic change. Yay. Okay, what else do we want? She's lonely, she's tired. We want her to feel small. Not small in terms of screen space, but small in terms of she's not this imposing figure. Maybe I want her to feel like she thinks herself as small. She's not worth people paying attention to her. She just wants to stay in her corner and not interact with anyone. Well, what if we did a high angle? So here I can choose my camera angle. Let's go high. So this brings the camera up. Now you'll notice that it reset. We're just looking at nothing. Let's bring that back to eye level right there. If I actually select the character and then go high, it angles the camera based on that character. This is the character I want the focus to be. So let's do this. So now I selected her, I set a high angle, and now look how she looks smaller. They're actually higher than her in screen space. We're making her feel like she's being pushed out of the picture. There's these people who are chatting and she's just alone in the corner. Maybe the camera's a little high. Let's push the elevation, maybe a little bit more like that. But we're starting to change the feel of this. We've got an angle to the camera, so it's tilted down, and we're starting to create this dynamic story just in this one camera angle. Do you think it's okay to use this app for ANO3 planning? Oh, definitely. It's not cheating at all. This is just layout. This is just planning. You could draw this out. You could use this program. Honestly, planning, there's no cheating in planning. You could shoot reference of this. If you have a big enough space and you just want to shoot yourself doing it, like take your camera, put it where you want it to be, do it that way. If you're more, if you're happier doing it with actual live features, like a live camera. Whatever this is just planning. And the more you plan, the more prepared you're going to be for your shot. That's the key here. Now, the other thing I really like about this is there's a whole list of shot sizes here. So I want a full shot. Now, they don't have a full, but that's similar to like a medium long shot or a long shot. So right there, I can set this is going to be a long shot wide with a high angle. Let's move the camera, and there we go. We're starting to get our composition. Yay. Now, you can also do other things such as bring in, let's say, a table here. So this is going to be a box, and let's actually, you've got all sorts of different files you can bring in. So let's say I want this, she's supposed to be on a self-checkout counter, but I want maybe a table right there. And I can just drag this and put that under her. So that's a little high. I think this is the up space. Yeah. So bring that right around there. So I can also lay out some quick props and just a scene to make sure I'm not ruining the perspective of anything. So there we go. You can lay all that out. Now you'll notice that it's actually not in here yet. This is just the shot generator, not the main program. So once I have this pretty much set, I can just go to the buttons here, which is save to board or import as new board. So I'll just save it to the board. And now it's in our board. So right there. So there we go. We've got it in. And I can start doing that for all the different shots where we can lay out the things. Now I've already done this. So this is the camera angle I kind of went with here. Not final, but kind of just the base idea right now. So very similar. You can see I went with this really deep, or I should say short camera lens, and I tried to push it so that my thought process here is this character is alone, kind of trying to be on their own. And instead of having the two people just kind of randomly in the background, you'll notice that I push them into the center a little bit more. This is to create the feeling that she's being pushed out of frame, that she is cramped in this corner and she's trying to stay alone. She doesn't want to interact with them. She's pulling away, and they don't care. If they cared, if they were paying attention to her, they would see, oh, maybe she wants to be left alone. They would back off. They would be over in this corner here, maybe. No, they're not paying attention to her. So they're pushing her into her personal space. That's the kind of feeling that I wanted to give here. Now, once you have this is where you can start doing drawings. So there's onion skinning here. So I basically just used the template here and started actually drawing out poses. So you can start with a base and then you can just turn it into your own drawings. Now I haven't gotten too far with this because I wanted to explore a little bit of the characters before I dove more into camera work. But with this, you can start refining your storyboard, but without having to try and figure out all the perspective, all the camera lens lengths, and all of that on your own in a drawing, which again I cannot do. It would be impossible for me to try and get that anywhere near correct. So this just gives you a way to start prepping that. Now, how long will the shot be? I'm not sure yet. Since there's no dialogue, I don't have a specific shot limit. I can take as much time as I want. I don't want to take as much time as I want, though. I want to make sure I keep it shorter, and it shouldn't be longer than it needs to be, basically. But I haven't timed it out yet. That's going to be when I shoot a reference and kind of, yeah, it's probably going to be like the whole shot. This was supposed to be like a 300, maybe 500 frame shot. And because of this whole sequence and everything I want to get into it, this is most likely going to be at least 1200 frames, which in that case, I'm going to be creating a different shots for different people to work on. So we've got this layout here, and I did these drawovers, and I just went through and I created the different camera angles for the different scenes. So we've got, or I should say the different camera angles for the different shots. I need to keep that terminology consistent. So here we have our wide shot, our wide 2 shot. Now I didn't set this up originally as a 2 shot. I was thinking you'd have the first character look over, and then you'd see the other character off in the distance, not close up, because there has to be a reason why they're not talking to them. But they'll be over here, and so we see Dana stands by the stack of watermelons. She's in the fruit aisle, and she gives a little wave and a smile. And okay, I want her far enough away. And originally it was just going to be a 1 shot, just cut into this. But as I was looking through this, so we have this shot here, we go into the POV, the point of view of Amy being the other character, and then we cut back here, and you'll see we have a different camera angle. I'm still respecting the left and right of the characters, so Amy here stays on screen left most of the time, and this keeps that consistency. But as I was looking at this, I was finding that it feels confusing. It feels like we've got this layout here where we have all of this kind of, we've established the relationships of all the characters, and then poof, we're in a whole new place and we've got a whole other character that's randomly there. So as I was looking through this, again, this is why planning is essential to getting a good shot, because you can find these out before you start animating and actually putting a whole character through a whole sequence. I figured I need something a little bit more like this, where we cut and we still have the other character. We still have Amy in the scene here, looking over. Now, I was actually doing some quick tests with this in Maya, just doing some, not so much animation tests, but character personality tests, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. And I found that I actually liked it more when we had a kind of closer view of the character here. So something like this. So we'd have the camera cut and we're right on the shoulder, like just there. And we see just the edge of the face looking at the other character. This still gives me that point of view feeling. The point of view is we're looking through this character's eyes, but we're just a little offset. So we still have that connection that this character is looking at the other, but we get a little bit more, a little bit more of a connection to the previous shot. And the program I'm using is Storyboarder, which is totally free. I highly recommend you check it out and use it. It's really cool, especially if you're interested in doing storyboarding or just planning out shot ideas. Okay, so this is kind of the idea I had. Now it came from this, where I just did this quick setup, and then, no, you know, this feels better, something like that. And you'll notice I haven't done much in here. Eventually I'm going to storyboard a little bit more. To be honest, it's a very subtle shot, so there's not going to be that much storyboarding necessary. But I can still do quite a bit in here. Now we cut, we go into a medium shot of the Amy kind of sitting there, and in this case, she wants to go talk to this person based on the story. So common sense told Amy to go over there and talk to her, be an adult human that wasn't shy and awkward. Instead, she looked away and typed on her phone. Just a little sad, no big deal. So she wants to go over and and she just turns away. So I want a camera angle that can work with both. So that's why I went with this 3/4. So we can see her looking screen right, and then she can turn away, look screen left, and look to her phone, which is going to be like right over here. So again, I used the base here, and I just drew some quick, like, just idea storyboards. Scared of people. I know that feeling all too well. On camera, oh, no problem. In person, and anyone who's met me in person, you guys know, Sin, you know. In person, I am so bad at talking to people. It is awful. Terrible. So I just did this quick drawing here, just to kind of get an idea. Does this work? Does the change happen well enough? Okay. Then we go to a medium shot. So at the end of this shot, she messages, this is going to be a long shot, by the way, this one here. So she messages Dana, and then I want to see Dana's reaction. So we cut again. But because we already established the relationships between the characters, I don't need to go back into a wide 2-shot. We can just go in closer to Dana, the second character. This way it's easier to see her reaction. Now, this is the shot I still need to work on because I'm not exactly sure the scenario, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. How to make sure this reads super clearly. Because there's a lot of information here that needs to be sent through to the audience in a way that registers clearly, quickly, and gives a reason why the character didn't walk up to the other, why they're messaging on their phones even though they're in the same environment. So this one's not quite done yet. I'm still trying to come up with different ideas, but at the moment in the book, she is working. They're basically closing the store at night. She's restocking the shelves. The other one's preparing to leave. So she would be like carrying boxes or putting things on shelves and just checking her phone periodically. So that's kind of the original story, what's happening. I might change that to make it work more clearly and more quickly to the audience. And then we cut again, and now we go into this medium close-up of Amy and her final reaction, because I want this to read emotionally very clearly. Okay, so we got through all that and we storyboarded it. Now, this is not a linear process. This was a lot of going back and forth. So going back to my script and going, okay, what do I want to have here? What do I want the audience to think about and register in these moments? And what I ended up doing was I just made a new document and I wrote down the subtext and emotional beats. Now, all of this here that I'm showing, this is not complete. I'm still working on this. I was literally working on it last night. I got most of this done last night before I went to bed. So I just went through and quickly, thinking of each scene, I wanted to write the subtext that I wanted the audience to read in here. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what that means, subtext is what the character is actually feeling when they are doing something, or what the character is actually saying when they say something. So my favorite example is if someone says, hi. That saying hi means hello. Yes, we all know that. But the subtext can be very different. It can be hi, as in, oh, it's good to see you. Pleasure to meet you, kind of thing. Or hi, as in, oh my God, I haven't seen you in months. How are you? Hi, how's it going? Now they can just go, hi. That subtext is totally different, and the way that shows on their face is going to be different. You can go, hi, hi. Same line, hi, but now it's, oh, it's you. Yay. My day's complete. Sarcasm. Yay. Hi. Or hi. Whereas just, yeah, exactly. Hi. I hate the fact that I got to see you today. My day is ruined. It's the same line, but totally different subtext. And in this case, this is the whole goal of this shot, is subtext. The character is sitting there. That's very easy to do. Just have a character sit, done. But the emotions and the thoughts have to read clearly through each moment. So I went through and I wrote all that down. So, for example, we have shot 2. This is the full 3 shot where we have Amy on the just sitting down and ready to go to bed and go home. She's just tired. So I did that. I took the line of the script, so tired, ready to go home and lie around in bed for the rest of the day, waiting for exhaustion to consume her. It's basically a mixture of tired, bored, and a little sad. She's got nothing to do at home. She's just going to be lonely. Then her phone buzzes. And story-wise, if we go back to the original here, when her phone rings, she almost ignores it. It's probably this other character who's just trying to contact her, and she doesn't really want to talk to them. So the phone buzzes, no big change. You would hear the phone buzz and it's okay. And then it rings again. Okay, let's take it out. But she doesn't really care. There's not a big emotional change here because it's not anything out of the ordinary. I want to make sure that's clear. I don't want this character to be sitting there bored and then phone rings. Oh, let's take out the phone. And this big reaction, because that's not an important bit of the story right now in terms of her emotional reaction. To her, this is boring. This is mundane. This is something she doesn't want to deal with. But then she reads the message and she sees that it's from someone else, from Dana. So this is when She perks up and starts to look around. She's curious, a kind of bit of concern about being watched. Like, where's this person? Why are they texting me? Where are they? How can they tell I'm sad? There's all of these kind of emotions going through her head. It's not just up and then look robotically to see the other person. There's curiosity, confusion, worry a little bit. All of these things would help sell the scene. Now, if it's a different character, you can have totally different subtext. This is the thing. This is based on your character. And like I was talking about before, how when you have a sequence where you have multiple characters, it's very easy for them to start feeling the same. This is how you break out of it. You start thinking of how this character would react in this situation. And you break it down. You put the subtext of each moment. What are they actually thinking? What are they feeling at this time? And this might change. So for example, one area I'm not too sure right now how I want to sell it is when we go to shot 4. So it's going to be shot 2. She looks around. It cuts to shot 3. We see Dana in the back kind of waving and like, oh, hi. Kind of showing that she's the one who sent the message. And then it cuts back to Amy. And what reaction do I want her to have? Do I want her to immediately be happy? Yeah, I think that would be kind of boring. So right now, the thought I'm having is, what if she's just a little shocked? Like, someone actually cares? Like, she's not used to this. She's socially awkward. She doesn't have many friends. So to have someone actually ask her if she's sad and if everything's okay, it would shock her a little bit. And also the situation of there's still that confusion of why did she text me instead of talking to me? So having maybe a stunned deer in the headlights moment just for a little bit before she kind of blinks and comes to her senses might be an interesting contrast between the sadness from before. I'm trying to ask these questions and figure out ways of pushing the reactions, of pushing the emotional beats. And then here, this is the character bios. So basically just writing out who this character is. Now, I was typing this out because I was late at night and I was trying to write it out and I couldn't even read my own handwriting. So I was just typing this out. And this is, again, not done, but it's just who this character is, what their personality is. It helps you kind of figure out what the subtext should be. Also, it helps you figure out the posing and everything later on. Okay. So, let's see. But Bo goes to bed and sleeps. Well, yes, I technically not go to bed. Last night I was actually working on this. I was sitting on my chair just in front of the TV listening to some music, and I never got up. I just fell asleep in the chair and then woke up in the chair this morning. I didn't even realize I fell asleep. So, yay. So, see, sure you can. Oh, wait. There was a question about dialogue from Blaze. Is it okay to cut audio from podcasts for animation shorts? Yes. So you can take audio from podcasts, from movies, from anything, and use them in your demo reel because it falls under educational purposes. You are not using it for profit. You are using it to educate yourself in terms of learning animation, but also in terms of using it to kind of apply for jobs. You're not using it for profit. That's the key point. But you're using it for your demo reel. That's it. The moment it gets bad is if you were to use this for a short film that you're going to profit off of and like sent to short film festivals, things like that. That would be bad. As long as for educational purposes or for your demo reel specifically, no worries. Yeah, on the plus side, if you say where it's from, you're promoting them. That's the other thing. Why am I visualizing the shots in anime? Honestly, whatever style you want, it could work. So, with that, I wrote all of this down. Now, as I was writing a lot of this down, I wasn't just writing it, I was drawing it. So, this is something that not everyone has to do because not everyone can draw. I'm not great at drawing, especially like consistently or for animation purposes, but I'm okay at drawing for coming up with basic ideas. So, as I was kind of drawing out or storyboarding moments, and I was skipping between all three of these. It's not a linear thing. It's not write it down, storyboard it, enhance your storyboards, write the character bios in that specific order. No, this is literally, I had all of these open at the same time, and I would storyboard a little bit and go, I'm not sure what kind of pose I want for the character on shot 2. Okay, so I started doodling these poses. How could she be sitting? Do I want her to have both knees up on her to her chin? Do I want it to just be cross-legged? Do I want her to put her head down into her knees? Do I want her kind of a little bit more offset? One knee up, one knee down. Maybe one knee should just be hanging off the table. So I just draw a few different things, and then I'll go back and refine the storyboard based on that. So it's back and forth. I start drawing some pictures of the character and go, I really like the way this, like this shocked expression here. I just kind of drew that randomly and just kind of, I just drew an expression and, I kind of like that. And that's the thing that inspired me to then go, that deer in the headlight moment, I kind of want to have that moment in there. I want that expression to happen. And it was just based on that drawing. So it's back and forth, all back and forth. And you can see my drawings are very simple. They're not super complex. And the way I tend to draw the body for these is just basic cylinder for the chest, basic cylinder for the hips. Gonna add the legs right there. And then the arms, just to kind of give a more shoulder section, you just kind of draw a little whoop and then like this, and you can draw the arms there like that. And this is actually a style that I learned really recently based on Owl House. If you look at the Owl House storyboards, they tend to draw the characters like this, and I find it's just a really cool, simple way of putting the characters down on paper without having to think too much of the anatomy and the complexity of the character. And it makes it very easy to figure out your body angles too. So I started just doing a lot of drawings. Now there's a question here. How do different animators work on a sequence where multiple characters are interacting? Because timing and thinking of how the scene is doing should be the same. They can have different characters or the same character but different shots. So typically, the way you typically work with a shot that has multiple characters is you'll animate all the characters. That's pretty much it. Usually if two people will work on on the same shot, it'll only be if the characters have a big enough space between them. So for example, if I'm animating, or let's say this is a 2-character shot and one person's reaching out and touching the other person's face, that's going to be the same animator working on both characters because there's so much different interaction and connection between them. Even if they're like talking face to face, to get that timing working between the two, you'll usually have the same animator working on both. If there's characters in the background, that might be another animator working on those because they don't really have an interaction with the characters in the scene right there. That's typically how it's handled, typically. But you have different scenarios. Sometimes certain shows will have people just focus on one character, so they'll just, again, as long as there's not too much interaction, they might split it, but yeah, that's typically the way it's handled. And who's the storyboard artist for Owl House? There's a few. The one I was looking at in terms of studying the drawing style was specifically Dana Terrace, the creator of Owl House, and watching how she approached drawing Luz and Ida. So I was kind of studying her drawing style. Spencer Wan is the other. He's an animator on there. He's the one that does those really amazing animated moments in Owl House. He's another one that I'm studying how he approaches drawing as well. So this is something I highly recommend. If you see kind of like a quick style of drawing that you like, check them out and try to understand, okay, why do they draw the characters in this way? Why do they draw the body this way? What simplifies it? What makes it easy to read? So I started incorporating that into these drawings just as practice for myself as well. So I'll just do a whole bunch of drawings and you'll see this is the character exploration at this point. So we talked about the shot exploration, the camera movements and everything. This is character exploration. How can I push these characters? So again, just a bunch of different drawings. How would they stand? For example, if the character was to stand up and kind of be miserable, what line of action do I want to push in there? Now this was just something I was drawing while I was what was I doing here? I was waiting for something to finish encoding and I was just doing some doodles just to keep my mind busy. But then here, this was another page of character tests, basically trying to figure out how both characters would stand. Now this is something I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but something I highly recommend, especially when you're dealing with a 2-character scene, is if you have 2 characters in your shot, they will act and behave very differently one to the other. They are not the same person. This means that they'll stand differently, they'll walk differently, they'll sit differently, they'll interact differently, they'll see the world differently. So this is the start of this. There's still a lot that I want to do in this case, especially if I'm going to be kind of giving this out to other people to work together on as a collaboration. I want to make sure I'm very clear about who these characters are and what their personalities are. So I was just drawing how would they stand. For example, one of the characters is a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more of an optimist, still socially awkward. Both of these characters are socially awkward, which is kind of the fun challenge here. They're not outgoing, they're not going to talk to each other face to face, so they've got that in common, but how can we separate them? One of them is aloof. Well, how can I push that? Maybe having her lead with her stomach. This is always a fun little experiment. See where the character leads when they stand. So what I mean by that is, for example, if you look at heroic poses, they tend to lead with their chest, like right here. The character's kind of leaning forward, but it's the chest that is at the apex of that line of action. To make a character more aloof, it's the top of the hip, right around there. So if we think of that line, this is the line we're starting to get. If we want the character to be more sassy, it's going to be the lower hip, right there. So it pushes that line a little lower. So it's still all a C shape, this same line of action, but by changing the position of it, we can change that little bit of personality. So this was me just exploring that. How can I push these characters to feel unique, but maybe stand somewhat similarly? Or do I go full, like, just change it completely, where one character might stand like this, where they're just hunched forward, hands in their pockets kind of thing. So they lead with their head instead. We get that. What if it's a little bit more shy, leading with the belly button instead of the hip? Character exploration. Now, are these final? Not at all. But it's something I highly recommend everyone does at some point, especially when you're working on a sequence, to just figure out what and who your character is. How would they do something differently? And I know I've shown this many times before, but I'm going to show it again because it is the best example of this, which is the Big Hero 6 character studies. And this is something I'm probably going to be working on during tomorrow's stream, is character studies based on these characters. So let's just take a quick look at this to show the idea. Now I'm going to probably be doing pose tests first, but it's same premise, which is you have a bunch of characters, And in this case, for anyone who hasn't seen this, it's from Big Hero 6. And before they started really animating on the film, they did these character tests, which is just put the characters in a similar situation and see how each one would interact differently in that situation. In this case, coming into the store and sitting down. And every single character is unique. That's what makes this shot feel beautiful. None of them are sitting in the same way. And again, this is, I know I'm repeating myself, but this is what I see with a lot of student work is, let's say you have a scene with 2 or 3 characters who all come in and sit down. And instead of having every single one sit down in a unique and interesting way, they just all sit down the same. They just walk in and sit, walk in and sit, walk in and sit. Versus this, where every character feels like a character. I love that little bounce. Like, look at those feet. As she walks, she does that little movement with her legs. It's just so good. So the beauty of this is right now we're looking at all sorts of different rigs. But if you had the same rig, so you were using maybe a basic acting rig like the Stuart rig, or sorry, not acting, a body mechanics rig, like the Stuart rig, it's just like a basic rig. You can still get all of this variation in personality in your shot. You don't have to have a different rig for each character, but you can sell that each one is unique. And that's the goal here. That's why I'm doing these character studies, is to figure out what elements do I want to push. Again, this is not final. It'll change once I get into Maya and figure out which rigs I want to use and explore that element inside of it. But it gets me started. And it's just doing these doodles, trying to figure out how are they going to sit? How do I want to pose this out? How can I make this unique? How can I exaggerate it? So, there's the character element there. Now, another thing that I'll do is I'll graph things out. Now, this is something I honestly don't see many people do, but I find extremely helpful for myself when I am animating, especially a longer sequence or things that have to escalate or de-escalate. So what I mean by this, and honestly, I do a variation of this in any shot that I do. So in this case, what I mean by that is the emotional journey of the scene. You can break this up in a lot of different ways, but the way I did it is kind of from positive to negative, from happy to sad. The character starts off at this kind of tired, bored, sad feeling. And I want to feel that journey. I want the audience to experience that journey along with the character. But I don't want that journey to be boring, and I don't want that journey to be filled with potholes. So what I mean by potholes is that journey should have a highs and lows. Kind of think of a roller coaster. It goes up, anticipation, it comes down crashing, you scream, and it comes back up, and you're ready again to have this ride of your life. There's this flow to it. It's not just bouncing up and down. It's just not doing this. Just bounce, 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 bounce. That would just make you sick and just over it. No, there's highs, anticipation, lows, fast, slow. There's this beautiful elegance to it that makes it fun to travel on. That's what I'm thinking of here. How can I push those highs and lows so that the character isn't just bouncing, but bringing the audience on a journey? So I just do a quick graph. So this is kind of like if we were to actually have it like on an Excel sheet or something. This is happy, sad, and this is specifically Amy's character arc. So she starts off at this kind of tired, bored, sad. It's not super sad, but it's like meh, medium sad. And as we go through, she looks at her phone. Her mood goes up just a little bit, just a bit. She doesn't really want to talk to this person, but she still likes this person on the other side. So it's not going to be like it makes her angry, just a little raise. And then, oh, wait, this is someone else. Curiosity and kind of, it's not fear. It's not, who is this person that's trying to text me? She knows who this person is. She's just shocked that they would text her when she knows that they're around here somewhere. So the emotion goes up a little bit, keeps going. And then she sees the person who waves at them, and then we cut back to her and she's stunned. Why would that person be nice to her? Why would they smile at her? So she's getting happier and happier. And she's about to go, she wants to go talk to her before, I can't do it. Socially awkward. I don't know what I'd say. I don't know how I would interact. She gets sadder, comes back down. And then she decides, I'm just going to text her. Like, kind of make it so she doesn't want to talk to me. So her lowest point, she comes crashing down. We get that emotional low. This is the lowest point in the shot. She's the saddest that she'll ever be at this moment here. So she sends the message. She gets the reply, in this case, of anything I can do to help, which starts to lift her spirits. She tried to push this person away, and instead of going away like everyone else does, they offered to help her, which is something she's not used to in this story. She's not used to people wanting to stick around. Whoop, it goes up. And from there, by the end of the shot, we get to the happiest moment in the shot, where she looks back, we see the other person read the message and smile, and then we cut back to Amy, who is happy that she made someone else happy, and happy that she has a friend. So we go on this emotional journey, and I'm graphing that out so that I can match my subtext and my character's emotional states to this, and make sure that, for example, here she's happy. Well, I don't want that to be the biggest happy smile, and then here at the end is just like, yeah, she's, let's make that a little bit bigger. She's happy, but like just meh happy, whereas this is like the really happy. No, that wouldn't make sense. This should be the happiest moment. So when I get into animation, I can always make sure that my emotional beats build up to a level and that I'm not sticking evenly. A lot of times when I see people starting to animate on shots, there's this kind of neutrality to the emotional beats where a character is going to be happy, sad, oh, angry, oh. And there's very little change in the face or in the body posture. But it's really just making sure that there's this contrast. I've seen a similar to this, but the person showed the flow of the shot using a curve. Well, that's the thing. This is a curve. So I would just connect all of this, and I now have a curve. I'm just thinking of that in specific moments, and then I create a curve in between. It's kind of like looking at the graph editor in step mode and then switching it to splines. That's honestly the way I tend to think about it. So I just kind of do these lines because I'm not great at drawing a curve. But it's just thinking of those emotional beats. And this way I know that the sadness she feels here at the beginning cannot be the same that it is here. This has to be much sadder. So whatever sadness I put here, I know I have to go further later on. So it helps you plan things out. And to kind of go back to the pothole analogy, the other thing that I tend to see in shots is bouncing of emotion, where it's happy, sad, happy, sad, happy, sad, and it's just bouncing up and down. So if you're drawing this out and you notice, for example, that your shots are going sad, happy, sad, happy, sad, happy, and etc., you're just getting this. That's not interesting. again, this is just bouncing. That's not going to be an interesting character evolution through a shot, especially if they're always hitting the same highs and then the same lows. Not interesting at all. So by just taking like a minute to graph this out, you can start to get a more interesting shot performance and shot progression in your character. Now the same thing goes with the camera beats. So in the cameras, I want the cameras to tell a story. Now we're kind of wrapping back around to what I was talking about before. The cameras of your shot are not just there to sit there and show the body mechanics. When you're dealing with a sequence, you are telling a story with your camera. You want that camera to enhance the emotional moments of the character and tell the audience more. You're using it as a language. You're using it as a way of showcasing the subtext of the character in an even more connected way. So, how do we do that? Well, this is where you have to study cinematography, look at film, study cinematography. I've done this on stream a few times. Really study what that camera angle is trying to tell you, what the camera is trying to show you in these shots. So, for example, establishing shot, this is just going to be like the outside of the store. It's to kind of give us context of where we are, what time it is. It's going to let the audience know what's happening. I didn't really put anything here because I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it or not. Honestly, if it's my own shot, I don't want to keep it because it's just adding more time. If it's a whole sequence, I'll definitely want to have it because it helps tell the story. Okay, but now we go into our full 3 shot. This is the first shot of the character. So this camera, I want it to enhance the feeling of the character being lonely. She's separated from everyone else and she feels small. She feels like she doesn't belong here. So using that, this is, again, it's a lot of going back and forth. So it was going into this shot and trying to sell this feeling of making her small, trying to make it feel like the character doesn't feel like she belongs in this environment. Oh, and this program is Clip Studio. This is the drawing program. I use this for my main drawings here because I just find the drawing tools much nicer. Storyboard is just kind of just for storyboarding. So we go from our full 3 to our wide 2. Now this is either an over the shoulder or POV. At the time I wasn't sure which one I was going to, and I just write down the story I want to tell with these cameras. So we are starting to connect with the character. There's the main character, Amy, still feels distant, but that gap is being bridged. We're starting to go into more positivity. So what does that mean? Well, it is just trying to bring characters together. So here, if we look at our storyboards, there it is. We look at here, look at the eye lines of the characters. They don't match up. Even if she was to look over the other way, so she turns her head over here, her eye line won't match up with theirs. She'll always feel smaller than them. Even though technically they're smaller, it makes her low in the frame. When I cut to this shot here, I want her eye line, which would be right around here, to match very closely with the eye line there. Which means they feel equal. Even though there's a distance between them, there's this connection. She's not above the other, so if we had the other character over here, she's looking down at them as if they're small and insignificant. So, ugh, why are they messaging me? Or if she was bigger, it would make her again feel small. No, they're even. It brings that connection, that that bridging of the two characters. So we go back here. Now we go back to our medium shot. This is going to be a lot of internal moments, so I wanted this to be closer. And we just keep going with that. Bring in all these different things. And for drawing, yeah, I don't use Photoshop. I'm not a fan of the brushes in Photoshop. I'm just not comfortable. I'll use it for image editing and composition stuff, but not for drawing. Clip Studio Paint, which is paid, I much prefer. And I use the EX version, which has some great animation tools. If you do want to get it, they go on sale. Yeah, it usually goes on sale like 2 or 3 times a year for 50% off. It makes it worth it. That's when I got my copy. So I basically write what I want the cameras to create, what feeling I want. And I also do the same thing that I did before. Same thing here where I take these emotional beats. I want, and Sir Wade, hey, thank you, welcome. A distraction. Thank you so much for the sub. Man, 13 months. Jeez, thank you so much. For anyone who doesn't know, Sir Wade was doing an awesome demo yesterday on blowing out a wall in Blender. I only got a chance to see a little bit between work, but it looked really cool. I was lurking in the stream for a little bit, but it was really cool to see. Welcome. We're let's see. So totally distracted now. It was rough but fun. That's half the fun of learning. So I was talking, oh yeah, the camera. So we were just like how I talked about the emotional beats, how I don't want it to feel like it's bumping up and down and kind of feeling like just a bunch of potholes. I want it to feel like a roller coaster of emotion. The camera is similar, where I don't want it to feel like the camera is just bouncing in and out, where it's going far and then close, and far and then close, and then far and close. That feels very sickening. It's just taking the camera and going wee wee. No, that's going to make the audience feel motion sickness, and it's not going to tell a story. The whole point of this story is that the character feels separated from everyone, and by the end there's this connection. I want to enhance that. I want to use that to tell a story. And one of the ways I'm doing that, aside from the angles and the way the characters connect, is how close the camera gets to the character. So if we look at this is far and then near. And same thing, I just kind of graph out the positions. Now you could actually make a graph. I just do the lines because, again, I'm terrible at drawing lines consistently. So we start out far. This is the establishing shot. We come in, so the character is lonely and separated. Now we go into the POV shot, which actually is technically further because it's a wide shot, going back to see the whole store and the character standing way away in the distance, the second character. So we're technically going out a little bit. And this kind of creates a little bit of a bounce that I'm not a huge fan of, but in this case it works well for what I want because it creates an anticipation. I think of this in animation terms. We're coming in and then we're anticipating. So we go out far, the wide shot, and then we zoom in and focus on the character coming close. We get that emotional beat in there. Then we go in close to the other character. And then finally, the closest possible on the last shot. So we're building up to that, going closer and closer and closer. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that the establishing shot doesn't really count towards all of these. Not in the same way, because we are going to be changing the environment completely. The establishing shot is just kind of the, like, here we are. So the character moments actually starts here, which means we create an anticipation in the camera before coming in and getting closer and closer and closer for the emotional beats. If I wanted this to feel different, where we build up and then the character, maybe they say the wrong thing and oh shoot, they they pushed the other person away, I would change this. Maybe by the end, the camera goes a little further and we end up just a little further than we were at the beginning. So we feel that the character has distanced themselves. They've lost a little something. But I can use this visually to help myself see if the cameras are bouncing. So for example, if this shot, instead of staying with a medium, I go with a medium wide shot or a medium long shot and go here. Now we're really bouncing. You can see it how the curve suddenly goes up, down, up, down, up. It's just zigzagging the whole time. Not great. But by having this as a medium shot, and maybe even like a slightly closer medium shot, we can start building this connection and this flow in the line and the way the camera moves through the scene. So I tend to think of camera work in this way of how can I use this to enhance the story? What emotions do I want to sell with that camera? And then try to make it so that on each cut, we are progressing the story in one way or another with the camera movement and the framing of the camera. Does it always have to be like that? No. But if you can use that to enhance a scene, it will make it feel stronger. And once again, coming into here, that was the goal, was we start, let's actually move this one, that was just a test. So we start kind of far from the character, and as the scenes progress, this one would actually be a little closer now, we get closer and closer and closer. So if we kind of just focus on the main character here, doot, 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 we can feel that getting closer. Even this one would be a little bit closer. Look at my drawing here, just a little closer there compared to there. But I could actually set my drawings to be the first one here. So we go from there to there, and then there. I don't have a drawing for this one, unfortunately. And then there. So we do this. So we get closer and closer to the characters. We feel this connection with the character a little bit more on each shot that we cut back to her. This way, as an audience, we are building that connection as well. And it's using all of that kind of cinematic language to help enhance these ideas. And there's a lot of it. This is where Master Studies comes in very handy. Because it's not, like, there's so many elements to this. There's the left and right. So if you split the screen in half, so if I do this, the screen is split in half. Both characters have their screen left, screen right space as we go through. So this character's screen left, this character's screen right if you cut it down the middle here. Let's actually take off the, there we go. Screen left, screen right. And what I'm trying to do is to show the distance of the characters. As the shot progresses, I want to bring them closer and closer to the center where they feel like they are together. Not past the center. If they kind of come in this way, this will make them feel antagonistic, like they're pushing through. If I was to imagine both characters in the same scene, what I would want is for them to be kind of equal. This shows that they've come together in the end, compared to separating and being further apart throughout the shot. So we start her here. As we cut through, you can see this character is very close to the center. She actually wants to be friends. So she's closer to the center right there. That's my thinking through this. She's not pushing past the center, not like the original people here, who are pushing into that space. And I might actually push them a little bit more to push into that space. But she is trying to bridge the gap between the characters. And then here, the character will be a little bit closer than they were there. Just a little bit. To show that, oh, that connection was bridged a little bit more. But then she pulls away. So she would come back down around this way, pulling herself away, extending the gap. making it feel like as much as she wants to, she can't. She can't make that jump to be friends. Then this one, you can see much closer. So she's always happy. She always wants to be friends. So she stays near the center. And by the end, much closer to the center there. So I'm using that left and right space of the character to try and tell a story of the emotional beats, of how the character can push through and feel like they're separating or coming closer to the other character and with their environment as well. So all of this stuff, it's stuff that I like to try and write down and try to plan out before I jump into Maya. Because the moment you jump into Maya, suddenly you're thinking of everything else. You're thinking of line of action, you're thinking of your spacing, your timing, your everything. And it can be very easy to overlook these things. Overlook, how does the camera enhance the story? How does the camera angle push this feeling in a character of feeling lonely or superior or small and weak? How can you push the characters to feel different? So this is pretty much everything I go through when I'm trying to think of a sequence. And I go through even more than that, honestly. This is just kind of the starting point of this sequence here. And it's going to change a lot. Again, this is just a few days worth of thinking and putting things down. Once I go into animation and start bringing things into Maya, I'll figure out that some things work, some things don't. And that's okay. It's exploration. It's trying to figure out what you can do and how you can enhance all of your moments to make them as powerful as possible, and starting that right away. The worst thing you can do when you're starting to do a sequence or any shot, honestly, is to just go, oh, I'll do this. And you jump right into Maya and you just start doing it. Or you shoot reference and you'll use your reference, which is good. Always use reference. But if you didn't think of who your character was or how you can enhance the scene by the camera and the position of the camera, you're losing a lot, especially when you're doing acting and sequence work. So that's kind of the main thing there. Now, I did want to show just a quick, let's see if I have it here. I was jumping between Maya as well as I was doing all of that. And part of what I was doing was just doing some quick poses in Maya to see if I could capture some of the drawings that I had done. So let's see if I think I have it right here. So I'm thinking of using the Amy rig for this, which is why in the story it's called Amy. So let me open this up here. And I was just exploring camera angles, exploring what I could do with the rig. This is another thing, which I'm going to probably be doing more of tomorrow. We might do a little bit of it today. We'll see. Just exploring the characters and pushing the rigs. Because I might plan something out. I want the character to curl up into a ball. But if I can't get the rig to do that, that idea might have to be changed. And I want to figure that out before I jump into a whole bunch of animation. So this was taking the Amy rig here and trying to quickly, just like this, it was just a few minutes of posing out the character, trying to get familiar with the rig and seeing if I could capture the pose that I wanted. Specifically, this character with the knee up and kind of holding the leg. Now you'll notice the hand, this hand isn't even posed out at all, but that's fine. It was just trying to get that base in there. And it was working. And this is where I also found out that, I want that camera angle where we have the point, not a point of view, but the over the shoulder view. Because I was exploring this and I have the other character over here. It was going to be something like this, and it's like, that character's so lonely in the screen. And I just moved the camera something like this, and it's like, oh, that feels much better already. It's not perfect because I would want the head to be kind of straighter and then turned more so we don't see the eyelash quite as much, so more like this. But suddenly that creates a connection where we get that eye line that connects. So jumping back and forth is not a bad thing. You do not have to just go one step at a time, and then once you're done the storyboarding, you'll never go back. No, you're bouncing back and forth all the time. So just quick character poses, and this was the trying to push that shocked expression a little bit. And this was literally, I was doing some work, waiting for a meeting, and I just posed out a few quick expressions. And that was it. But it helped me understand what I can do with this rig and what I can't. So let's see, this is out of context. There are so many videos for animation, like how to animate quadruped walk. My question is it okay to watch, or should I learn manually by looking at reference and from master studies? Do both. You do all of them. So the big thing is when you're learning anything, if you're learning how to draw, if you're learning how to animate, if you're learning anything, there's not one source that's going to teach you everything. So for example, let's kind of stick with drawing because it's a little easier to explain. If you're learning how to draw and you're doing anatomy studies, how to draw bones and muscles and all of that, that's going to be great because you learn how to shape the body. You learn that the rib cage is this oval shape. You learn that the pecs lie over top and that they attach to the arm bone here, which creates this very specific shape to the pectoralis muscles. You learn where the latissimus muscles attach back here and how that creates this round shape in there. You learn a lot of really good things of how the body is shaped, but you don't learn how to push the gesture. You're just learning anatomical things. So this is where gesture drawing comes in, learning how to push the line of action of a pose, how to capture the feeling of movement in a pose. Now, this is going to teach you how to get that feeling of motion and clarity in a pose very nicely, but you're not going to be learning anatomy, and you're also not going to be learning how to simplify a drawing. And this is where master studies come in. Master studies help you to learn how to take real life and turn it into 2D. So for example, I was doing that earlier, like I was talking about earlier in the stream, with Owl House, and really trying to understand how Dana Terrace, the creator of Owl House, how she draws the human body and how she simplifies it when she draws, which is basically she draws the body as if it's kind of a cylinder here, cylinder for the hips. You'll just draw a little line there so we get this connection of the legs, something like that. I'm butchering her style, but so we get the legs like so, and then the upper chest, she kind of draws this little shape like this and attaches the arms in. So it's this very basic form, but based on all of these. So you combine all of them, the knowledge of anatomy, the ability to create a gesture, and the simplification of the form, and suddenly you can draw and animate in 2D. But it's all of them. With animation is the same way. You learn how to animate a quadruped. So you watch a video. You're watching someone else's workflow. How do they approach setting keys, creating the poses? It teaches you the mechanics of all of the animation techniques of doing it. But you also need to study reference. How does that animal move? What happens with their anatomy? What happens with their feet when they press down? A video tutorial is not going to show you all that, especially if your video tutorial was how to animate a dog and you need to animate a cat. Or even if it's a cat, well, does a tiger move the same as a lion? Does it move the same as a house cat? You have to study your reference. And then master studies helps us know how to exaggerate that. So for example, I want to animate a tiger. Well, let's take a look at Aladdin. How did they animate Raja in Aladdin? What did they change? Or maybe I'll look at how they animated Shere Khan in Jungle Book and study how did they exaggerate his shoulders? How did they exaggerate the weight in his feet? Not to copy it, but just to understand what they changed so that I can try to create a similar feeling or maybe a different kind of feeling to that. So all of them go into play. And this goes for anything. When you're learning animation or how to draw, there's no one thing that will be the key to learning. It's a conglomeration of everything. And do you have to do them all evenly? No. If you prefer to do master studies, that's still going to teach you a lot of stuff. If you want to do mostly master studies, that's okay. Just be sure that you're doing the other two as well. Or if you prefer to do just focus on studying the reference, that's okay too. But don't rule out master studies or the quadruped. So for this, if you're trying to learn a specific type of quadruped, let's say you want to animate an elephant, if you have a video tutorial on how to animate an elephant, watch it. That'll help you kind of understand the techniques that you could use. Then you study your reference. Really study your reference. In-depth study of the reference, especially if it's the first time animating a elephant. And then, just for the sake of it, do some master studies of elephants in cartoons. Dumbo, Jungle Book. Look at those. See how they were animated and how did they handle it. It can kind of give you insight on different things you can do animation-wise and spacing-wise. So, for example, how do I get that elephant to really feel heavy? Well, how did they get it to feel heavy? And you study the spacing in the master studies. So that's the big thing I would recommend. And again, is kind of tying it back into what we were talking about here. It's very similar in that there's no one way to approach preparing for a sequence. It's a lot of different things. Cinematography, posing, character studies, character emotional analysis, and mental analysis. There's all of these different things that you can put together to make good planning before you even jump into animating in Maya. See, what would you say comes first in a pitch Bible series creation, the script or the character design? I would say it really depends on your background. So for example, if you're trying to pitch a series and your background is that you are a writer, well, most likely you're going to have the script done up first. If your background is a storyboard artist, you might have the character, maybe not the character designs, but just like the basic story beats in storyboard form first. If you're a character designer, you'll probably have the character design first. So it really depends. Honestly, as long as the how to put this, as long as it's clear what your goals are, and as long as it captures the executives, I guess you could say, that's the important bit. Now, I will say I've never done a pitch Bible. I've never pitched a series before, so don't take my word as law for this. I would actually do some more research on just look at YouTube for character designers or series pitch artists. I'm gonna take your word. No, don't. It's there's a YouTube channel I had just seen recently. Let me see if I can find it here for you. That's all about like pitching ideas. I'm gonna see if I can find it. I would also look at people who have already pitched shows. So for example, Dana Terrace, who pitched Owl House. Look at Alex Hirsch, who pitched Gravity Falls. Like, just do some searching on how they approached it. Sometimes they actually show what they did, and you might even find the pitch Bible that they had done. I'm just looking at YouTube here to see if I can find that channel. Storyboard art, I think. Yeah, I think this is it. Okay, this might not be it, but here's a YouTube channel just on storyboard art. This might have something in here. What else? I think there's another one here. Let me see if I can find it. And yeah, The Owl House is an awesome cartoon. I highly recommend everyone check out if you have the time. It is a wonderful, wonderful cartoon. I think there was another one. Let me see if I can find it super quick for you. Which was... This is what happens when you have too many YouTube channels subscribed to. Can't find anything when you want. And I don't remember the name of it. I just remember subscribing to it when it first started. I'll have to see if I can find it for you later on. What program are you using right now? This is Clip Studio, which is it is a paid program. They have sales on a lot of times, so it'll go down to like 50% off. I love this program. It's a great drawing program. If you want to do 2D animation, it can do some 2D animation, but if you really want to go to like proper 2D animation, Toon Boom is a good one, or TV Paint. Have you used Affinity Photo? I have not. I don't think I've heard of it before. Photo. I'm assuming it's similar to Photoshop. I tend to use a lot of Photoshop when I'm doing like editing stuff, because a lot of the clients that I work with need Photoshop files. So I'll tend to use that a lot more. For drawing specifically, I prefer Clip Studio because I find the brushes just work better and it just feels better. I don't know why. I've tried to draw in Photoshop and it doesn't feel great. So yeah, so this is basically the way I approach creating a sequence of animation. So storyboarding it, writing it out like a script, or I should say a screenplay. This I find really helps, especially when you've got a longer idea. It just keeps things organized and lets you kind of figure out the camera angles a little bit more. And once you do that, you can bring in Storyboarder, and it's nice because it actually organizes it in scenes, which is beautiful and makes it so much easier. So yeah, that's my typical approach. I say typical because there's nothing really typical about it. It changes from shot to shot what it needs per shot, but the main goal here is that at least I'm thinking of everything. I'm asking myself questions and trying to answer them. And these questions are things like, who are these characters? What emotion do I want the audience to feel? How can I enhance that emotion? How can I make it clear what the audience should be looking at and what the emotional beat is during this moment? It's Photoshop without a monthly subscription. Subscriptions are bad. Subscriptions are not great. The only bonus to subscriptions is that you always have the latest version. So for example, with Photoshop, I'm always on the latest version because I have to pay a subscription to get it, which sucks, but is also nice because I never have to update, or I'm never like multiple ones out of date. But yes, I'm not a fan of subscription-based things just because if you don't use it, well, you're paying for nothing. What about game animation, fighting, walking, and etc.? How would I approach it? Regardless of animation, game animation, you would approach it the same as any other animation. In the sense of study your reference, plan it out, all of that. The main difference is going to be how the character starts the action. That's really the big difference. With, let's say I'm going to do a punch, so a character attacking. I need to do an attack animation in a game. Well, in real life, that means that I'd have a big anticipation, bring back the punch, hold, and then punch through. So you'd have anticipation, hit. But in a video game, we have to keep in mind that when the player hits the button, so they hit the punch button, you don't want the character to then go, okay, punch. It has to be quick. When the player hits the button, it has to just go. So you would just skip the anticipation and go straight into the punch, and you would have more time afterwards, the settle, and then the reset of the punch would spend more time in there. So it changes how you have to approach entering an animation. And one of the best things to do for something like that is look at video game animation. Do master studies. Do master studies of Smash Brothers. Do master studies of League of Legends. Of any game that is similar to the one you want to do. And it's Carla. Thank you so much for the sub. Oh, I really appreciate that. Yeah, Street Fighter, like fighting games, just even adventure games, Legend of Zelda, Super Mario Brothers. Study their animations and see when you hit the button, when does the reaction happen? How much anticipation is there compared to the reaction afterwards? So that's going to be the main difference. Other than that, game animation and film animation, TV animation is very similar. I would say the only other main difference, the big difference, is, and this depends on the game. In games, you can sometimes move the camera around or have the character at different angles on screen. So for example, League of Legends, the character could be facing, even though you can't move the camera, they can still be facing forward, back, left, right. So what that means is that we have to make the animation look good from many angles. In film, we don't have to worry about that so much because it's just one camera angle. So as long as the character looks the best from that angle, the other angles, it doesn't mean that they have to be totally broken, but we don't really care if it doesn't look great. So those are the two main things. So let's see. Now kind of going back to the sequence stuff here, there is one other thing that I typically try to do when I'm going to be starting a sequence, and this is something I'm probably going to do a bigger demo on tomorrow, but I can start showing it a little bit here today, is just like how I did this quick test here. This was a quick test I was just doing. I downloaded the rig and I wanted to see if it would even work for what I wanted to do. So I'm trying to get her into this position here. I will bring in the rigs I want to use. So this is the Amy and Dana rig from, let's see, I have the link here, Gabrielle Salas. These are both rigs that anyone can use. I believe they're $15 each, which is not that much for a rig, and they're really appealing rigs. And I will just do some quick tests with them. And these tests are twofold. These tests are, one, to find out, do these rigs even work? Can I make these rigs do what I want them to do in this shot? If I have a really dynamic, cartoony shot, can I make these rigs cartoony? Do I have the controls necessary to push the extreme bends in the arms? Can I exaggerate the squash and stretch? Is it gonna break? Is it gonna explode? If it's more of a subtle shot, do I have all the facial controls that I need to really get emotional acting in here or decent lip sync. If I'm trying to pose out the mouth and I can't even get a decent shape and it's just basically the jaw opening closing, I'm not going to use that for a lip sync shot. So I will do some quick tests, and these can be actual animation tests or even just posing tests. Now, the second thing that is very important with this, and this is the one that I see a lot of students fall into, is the lack of character diversity. Now, what I mean by character diversity is, if you look at both of these rigs, I've opened them up, even though they are very different, we can see that these are two different rigs. They are posed exactly the same. They're both in the T pose. They just start like that. They're facing forward. They have the same expression on their face. And if ever you start a shot and your rigs are like this, which is pretty much any shot you're going to start in 3D, this is one of the worst things that you can do to start a shot with, is to just start animating from here. Because these are not characters yet. These are rigs. These are just rigs that have been opened up, and that's it. That's not visually interesting. That's not dynamic. We don't have characters here, we have rigs. So, by doing character tests first, what this allows you to do is push the character. Who is this? How do they stand? What makes this character unique compared to the other one? So let's actually do that right here. So just so we can keep this kind of visual. So this is the default pose. The rig opens up. And then this here is going to be the neutral pose. So this is the neutral character pose. A neutral pose is, if you were to go into any shopping mall or stand in line in a store, look at how every person stands when they're not doing anything. So they're just kind of waiting, bored, waiting to go and pay for their things. Everyone stands differently. Some people lean on the cart. Some people stand up straight. Some people have their hands in their pockets. Some people are scratching themselves nervously and kind of just thinking. Some people are on their phone by default. Others are looking around. Kids are bouncing around. They're full of energy. Everyone's different. It's not just, oh, we stopped. Wait. Okay, now we can move. Wait, stop. And back into the T pose. It's... you stand exactly like that. Yeah, it's very comfortable. Your arms don't get tired at all. If you stood like this by default for any length of time, your delta or your shoulder muscles here, they would be huge. You just have the awesome shoulder muscles. So if real life doesn't have these poses, I don't want this in my shot either, because any pose or any animation that I try to come up with is going to be coming from this unnatural state, and this state that all rigs kind of match and feel the same in. So instead, let's give these characters a default pose. And this is where all the studying we had done before comes in handy, where you have your character bios. Who are they? What do these characters feel and think? What is their default behavior? You can try to implement that into the character. For example, if they're a superhero, that means they're brave and heroic. Well, they'll stand with their chest out, that kind of hero stance. If they're nervous, they might be a little bit more curled in if they don't want to be seen by people. If they're shy, if they're kind of standoffish, they might kind of stand with their arms crossed so that it kind of creates this barrier between them and other people automatically. They might squint by default if they're not a happy person, or if they kind of don't trust people. Or maybe it doesn't even have to be emotional. It could be this person works in the fields all day. They work out in the sun. Like my family, they're all farmers. They work in the sun all day. And especially my older family, back in those days when you didn't have sunglasses and stuff, you just worked in the field. Everyone squints a little bit because you're in the sun a lot of the time. So there's this kind of not an angry squint, but just a, like, your eyes are used to blocking out the sun. So you have a lot of people who kind of look around like that a lot, versus other people who might have big wide eyes and they're always like excited about everything. So it can be a lot of different elements like that. And I'll take a sip of water. Thank you for the reminder. So how can we sell that in these poses? So you can base it off of what you had written out, what you had drawn out. So this was this test here where I was trying to figure out how both characters can stand differently and what their basic stance would be. So for example, Amy here, both of these characters are socially awkward. They are not used to talking to people. So how can I push that? Well, for one, they're not going to be open. So they're not going to be keeping their face forward in a kind of like neutral stance. In Amy's case, she's kind of a pessimist. She's negative in a lot of different ways. So she might keep her head down, kind of like it's almost like she's challenging anyone to come up and talk to her. So it's kind of keeping her head down and kind of pulling away a little bit. So kind of leading with the hip a little bit more than the head. So it's a challenge, but it's kind of like, oh, back off there. That kind of feeling. Whereas Dana here, the character that I have is, she's a little bit more, she is socially awkward, but for a different reason. She just never had the chance to interact with people. So she wants to make new friends. She wants to have this new experience of talking with people and making friends. So she might be a little bit more proactive in approaching people, but she doesn't know how. She has no practice with interacting with people. So how can I push that? Well, she's eager. She wants to talk to people. And Master Roshi, thank you so much for the follow. I really appreciate that. She wants to interact with people, but maybe it's just like a little bit of nervousness where her hands might be in her pockets, or maybe she kind of keeps her hands to herself because she doesn't know what to do with them. Maybe she's got like this thing that she does with her hands. She just holds her hands. There's all sorts of ways we can kind of push that natural state of the character interacting with things. So let's just try that here a little bit. Now, this is also going to be the first time I actually pose out a full pose on this character, other than the one I did that I showed earlier, the one with the character with the knee up. So this is also going to be me testing the rig, which I'm excited for. So I kind of want to push that side up. So all the weight in the leg is going to be supported on this side. Gonna bring the character down a little bit. Something like that. One of the first things I do when I'm posing out a character is I just like to get the feet positioned out, because the feet will help just dictate how the character is balanced. It also gives a lot of personality to the character. So for example, right now, that hip or that foot is lined up right with the center of the hip. I could probably push that a little bit more. Something like this. She also leads. I could push it so that she leads with her hip a little bit more. So let's kind of push her forward, and let's actually bring this foot back a little bit. I want to experiment with something. So the reason I'm doing this is it gives her the feeling that she doesn't want to take a step forward. If this foot is forward, it gives the feeling that she's ready to take a step and move ahead. If I bring that foot back, it gives the feeling that she's ready to shift her weight backwards, to pull away from people ever so slightly. So let's see if we can kind of exaggerate that a little bit. Now, I want the hips to lead, so I'm going to take the spine and just kind of bend this back here. Something like this. So if I look at the line of action from the side here, it should be the hips that kind of have the most forward position as much as I can. Okay. Take that spine. Let's kind of add a twist to the body. So if the hips are rotated this angle, I want the chest to be kind of the opposite, just to add some kind of contrapposto to the body. And then I could push the body this way. But this makes it feel like she's more sassy. I want to give the feeling that she's a little bit more dynamic, a strong, straight line of action. So let's see if I can exaggerate that a little bit more. Okay. So this is also where you can explore limitations on the rig. So, for example, when I was drawing the characters, I tended to draw them very kind of straight and thin, based on some of the rigs that I'd worked on previously. This rig, she's definitely got wider hips, which means that the line of action that I'm trying to push, which is this one here, this simple line of action, is going to be harder to make read correctly because, well, we've got hips coming out here. So this line is going to have to be different than my drawing. Is that a problem? Not at all. I just have to think about it. And I don't want to match it exactly, because if I try to match it exactly based on my drawing, I'll get something like this, where I'm trying to get this in one clean line, and it's not going to happen. I'm going to end up breaking the character if I try to do that. So let's try to push it a little bit. Part of that is I might just twist the character around slightly. So instead of facing, maybe she's one of those people that she doesn't look at people directly, or like some people, when they talk to you, they stand like facing you exactly. Maybe she tends to talk to people out of the side here a little bit more. So to camera, she would actually be a little bit more this way. And with that, I might be able to push that line a little bit more clearly, just by pushing that angle. Okay. So let's actually get the arms in there, because the arms are going to be very important. For this arm, I believe the FKIK switch is here. Okay. So switch that to IK, and I don't think there's a follow hip, so I'm just gonna have to move this myself. Now, when you're doing these poses, don't worry about trying to get everything absolutely perfect right away. Like, I'm not trying to get a polished pose right off the bat here. What I'm trying to do is just start feeling out the rig, see if it feels okay, how the controls work, and also just trying to see if I can get the personality of the character shining through on the pose. Not polished, but just kind of in there. And already we can see that, especially from the back here, that's feeling a lot better. From the front, I think I might have pushed the character a little bit too far. Let's kind of bring them back here a little bit. Okay. Let's get that head angle. Head angle tells a lot about a character. So we want that kind of lower angle, and she's pulling away from whoever she's talking to. So let's kind of pull that head away, and I'm just going to set the eye control here to, okay, good. And I think let's turn off the follow. Okay, good. So I want the eyes to just kind of stay looking towards the camera. I'm not going to worry about expressions yet. I want to see if I can get as much of the character to come through on the pose first. So let's see. One thing that's not really reading are these shoulders. Need to relax those a little bit. And then this one would go up. Okay. So with that, we're starting to get there. I'm not a fan of the silhouette that I'm getting here. The body is very thin and kind of boring, for lack of a better term. So let's see. I wonder, just out of curiosity. Yeah, there you go. That's feeling better. Now, I don't want to make it feel like she's going to break her spine. So let's try to pull that back a little bit. Okay. But we're starting to get that line of action in her pose here. This hand should be relaxed. This song is very, I wouldn't say epic, but deep choir for posing. So let's kind of bring that back. That shoulder should also come back here a little bit, like so. And let's bring this foot in a little bit. It's not coming off the ground. Maybe push it back again, so we still feel like she's wants to take that step back. And watch how it feels from all angles. So the main thing I'm kind of feeling is that the spine is just a little too far bent. So let's take that and kind of turn it this way just a bit and reduce that bend in the spine there. Now, a nice little posing thing that you can do is, let's actually use a locator to showcase this. So locators, if you take a line and go from the pit of the neck, which is right there, that line of the neck, go straight down, that should be your balance point. So if this, in this case, if I want her to feel like she's balancing on this foot, I've pretty much got it in place here, where that foot is underneath the pit of the neck, right there. So this creates that feeling that she's in balance from the front. I can also look at this from the side and make sure that that foot is pretty much behind that line right there, or if I was to line it up to her neck, there you go. So it's a nice little way to tell if your character is decently balanced or not. Okay, so something like that. The neck is definitely way too far back. We tend to have a lean forward to our neck, so I'm gonna exaggerate that. And for now, let's kind of keep it like this. I don't want to go too far into the polishy stuff just yet, mostly because things can change. So I could start, for example, pushing the bend bows, and I would want to maybe exaggerate that line of the leg a little bit. But it doesn't matter right now because I might change things. So I'm not going to start getting into the fine nitty-picky details here just yet. I'm just changing the feet so we have this more dynamic angle between them. Okay. Now, expressions. We can push the expression a little bit here. So let's actually 2D pan and zoom and change up her default expression. Right now we've got this, I would say, just kind of default expression, which is okay, but what if Amy had a default crossed arm pose? That could work as well. That would definitely make her feel more like inapproachable. I could definitely make a variation of that. And this is another thing you can do. Make variations. Just because I pose this character out here in this way doesn't mean I can't make 2 or 3 different variations. And it's one of those things that at Disney, for example, and Pixar, they want the animators to do. Get in this habit. It's actually something that they do in studios. Make variations of something. Maybe let's say they'll do this for animations as well, where you have one version of the take where the character doesn't want to talk to someone, so they cross their arms and they kind of look at them like this. Okay, that works. But try a few different ways. What if instead of crossing their arms, the character kind of just turns their shoulder and brings it up a little bit and just keeps it a little bit more subtle? What if they just bring their head back and kind of, no. Try those and see, maybe exaggerate it even more. Instead of just crossing the arms low on the kind of stomach area, they cross their arms and they're like this with their head way down. Try those variations. Do this in your shots. If you're an animation mentor or any online school, do this with your shots. Don't take the first thing you do and go, done, haha, this is perfect. It's exactly what it needs to be. No. Try 3 or 4 different takes of it. And don't take too much time on this. Again, I'm not going into polish on this yet because maybe I'll try another different neutral pose and it's just more interesting. Well, I'll go with that instead. So, yeah, explore. Now, let's actually get this eye open a little bit more here. I'm not used to these eye controls, I will say. I was playing around with it a little bit yesterday. They are very cool. So for this rig, if any of you are interested in using it, a lot of the facial controls are controlled here. So for example, the brows, I can kind of use these controls to pose them out as kind of a base, and then use the fine-tune controls here to refine anything I want. There's also like squeeze attribute here, so she's kind of, I'm kind of imagining her a little bit kind of brows down a little bit, and then I don't need to bring that outer up. Need a picker for that. I'm not a fan of pickers, honestly, for one specific reason. I do a lot of demos for people, and unless I have 2 monitors that I can use for a picker, I find pickers to be kind of a pain when you have to have it on one monitor. So I'm not a fan of using pickers because no one can see what I'm doing. But I highly recommend, if you do have a GUI picker for something, use it. It makes it so much easier to select controls and to just kind of exaggerate, or not exaggerate, make it easier to animate more quickly, which is always good. So I kind of want to bring, how do I want to do this? Because we're missing one of the eyes, which I'm not a fan of. I'm going to bring her head up a little bit. let's bring it actually back here. I think this is going to work well. It's still going to make her feel like she doesn't want to look at the person, but without that neck looks a little too bent there. Let's reset that. I might take the upper chest here and just kind of bring that forward a little bit. Okay. Art Stuff, hey, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. I have 2 monitors. Yes, 2 monitors makes animation a lot easier. I actually have 4 monitors, which is nice when I'm animating alone, but I can't really share. Well, I guess I could share all 4 if I wanted to, but it would make it a little hard to see what I'm doing. Okay. Something like that. Her... see, what controls do I have here? This is the nostril. Okay. Eyes. I think let's add a little bit of squint here. A little. And can I blink upper lid? So this rig is very kind of it's, what's the word I'm looking for? Why can't I think of my words here? It's attribute heavy, which means that to animate the blinks, you're not just taking a controller, you're using the actual attributes to open and close the eye. Honestly, I don't mind that, because when I was a student, when I first learned how to animate, this is the way that we typically animated the face, was a lot of attributes. So it's kind of going old school for me, going back to my roots, but it can be a little, I wouldn't say annoying, but kind of a learning curve if you're not used to that. Okay, let's bring those eyes over just a little bit more. Have her face looking towards camera. And then her mouth, there's a lot of different expressions I can have here, but I think I'm just going to add a little tension to the mouth. And then let's kind of bring that corner down there. So it's, I don't want her angry per se, but her default expression should be maybe a little bit more negative, I guess you could say. Untrusting. She doesn't want to be miserable, but she's been hurt a lot. We could put it that way. So, quick first, skeptical, kind of wary of new people. So, we get a pose something like this. Now, is this final? Not at all. We haven't posed out the hands. I can definitely go through and make some variations, but again, I don't want to polish this up yet, because maybe we'll make a different version of this and have her arms crossed. Maybe I'll change the angle of the head and make it so that she's a little bit more like this. Totally valid. All of these are choices we can make. Maybe she's looking at people, like giving them a side eye a lot more, versus this where there's that side eye, but it's a little bit more kind of just a little side eye. This is like, whoa, no, you don't do that. And you can see how it changes the personality of the character. Let's go to the other one here. And Joaco and Jazzary, thank you so much for the follows. I really appreciate that. So let's take her pose. How can we make this a little different? Well, part of the description of the character, once again, this is taken from a book. So I could reimagine the characters if I wanted to. That's not a difference at all. I would just have to think of that character. If I want to follow the character in the book, in this case, she's athletic. She's very confident in the sense of she knows she can do things. She's a hard worker, but she is socially inept, I guess you could say. So she has trouble talking to people. She has trouble interacting with people. How can I sell that? So here's a question. How would you do the different variations? Using multiple files or maybe using stepped keyframes? This is not my animation file, so I would just do this in the file here. So for example, let's do a quick pose variation here. I would just take the pose, go forward, and set another key. Now, right now this was going to be my walking pose, but I could change that later. And let's just make a variation. So I can take that arm here. Let's say I want crossed arms. And pose it out. And let's say kind of hugs herself when she crosses her arms. So crossed arms, there's a lot of different variations. You can do the crossed arms and you're hugging yourself. You can do crossed arms and they're just down and kind of tucked. You can do a crossed arm where it's something like this, where the elbow just kind of rests on the wrist. Crossed arms have a ton of variation to them. I would highly recommend just doing a Google search for crossed arms if ever you're doing something like this, and just see what kinds you can get away with. Don't just go with the default crossed arms that first come to your head. So I'm again doing this super quick. Don't worry about spending a ton of time on this, because I would much rather, in this case, for example, I can do these two quick variations. So, okay, crossed arm. I might pose out the fingers a little bit here just to avoid them looking so stiff. Oops. Add that and then remove this. And kind of do something like that for now. Very basic wrist or finger pose. Kind of bring that arm up. And now we can compare. Okay. Oh, and this is where you want to make sure you set a key. I don't think I set a key on my IK arm here. So let's quickly just get that back into position. When you're switching FK to IK, always make sure you've got keys where you want them to be. Luckily, I didn't have too much done. So, again, the reason why you want to do this quickly, because if ever you do forget something, it's not a big deal. Just quickly repose, and there we go. So, we've got this. Well, which one do we like more? We can start comparing, and maybe let's kind of push the head angle too on this one. So maybe this one, she's going to be a little bit more kind of angry, and we can see which one feels like our character. Which one do we feel works better as a default pose for this character? I would say the angry doesn't work, but maybe we'll push it this way. Now we can compare. I think one thing with this pose. The other thing with having these, you can start noticing things you could improve. So for example, the elbow here is a little too bent. It makes it feel like she's constantly got like she's just keeping her arm bent for no reason, which is just weird. So I might just tweak that a little bit and straighten that arm out so it feels more like it's resting against her leg versus curled against her leg, which just is odd. So yeah, start comparing. And this is the point of all this, is we find out who our character is. And we can make variations, iterate, and then we can go, okay, I like the crossed arm pose, let's say. Let's take that and make other variations of that. Maybe crossed arms like this, crossed arms a little bit more relaxed. What if she crosses her arms and she keeps her hands in fists like she's always ready to fight? Or what if she crosses her arms but it's almost like she's hugging herself, even though she's kind of telling people to back off. It's not because she's ready to fight, but just based on the hand poses, she's scared. She's hugging herself because she's afraid of what other people might do to her versus what she might do to other people. So this is the point. And you can see how just by doing this, imagine, okay, we've got the character in this pose here, and now we've got to animate the character starting to walk. If I have the character in this pose, well, I've already got her body in position, her arm in position. If she's about to walk, well, she might drop her arm down here a little bit as she starts to get ready to take a step. And we can already see she's going to start with her right foot because that's the one that's not supporting any weight. So that's going to be the one that starts to move first. We can already start to envision how this character is going to start walking based on this pose. And it's going to be their walk, not a vanilla walk. Now, if we look at the other character, they're just in default T pose, which means that if they're going to start to walk, the arms come down. So let's bring the arms down. Whoop, and then whoop. There we go. And we start to walk. And it's a vanilla walk. Because there's no character in this pose yet. This character is not a character. It's just a rig. So create these default poses for your character. It's going to make a huge difference in your animation. You're going to have a lot more control and power over the character that you create. What if... No, that makes her feel too mean. Okay, so this character, she's athletic. Well, how can we sell that? She's also a happy person. This person is not a very happy person. She had a miserable life. This one, happy. Well, happiness is going to be a lot more kind of... we could go with really like that cheery happiness where it's a lot of shoulders and it's up and high. It could be that relaxed happy where everything just feels not like there's no tension in her shoulders. It's not like she's trying to keep people off. It's just totally relaxed. If she's athletic, I kind of want to push a little bit more of how do I want to do this? This is where we have a ton of choices, and again, we can just try a few. Let's just do that. I'm going to take a pose that's very similar to this one in a sense. And what I'm going to do is, right now, this pose is kind of leading with the hip a little bit more. I want to give her kind of a wider stance. So she's athletic. She's ready to run all the time, which means her feet aren't going to be like right next to each other like this. This makes a very unstable pose. It's someone could just walk over and push you and you're gonna trip a little bit. If she's athletic, so maybe she plays soccer or football or something like that, her default stance might be a little wider because she's trained for many years to be tackled and to keep her balance. So she might have a wider stance just by default. It's kind of like if you ever see people who are trained like in the military, their default stance is very militaristic because they trained so much in that. Their feet might be unnaturally in line with each other. Whereas most people, when they
they stand, they have their feet kind of offset, so our weight is over one leg versus the other. Someone who's been trained in the military might have their feet much closer to center and just kind of perfectly in line. They stand up straight. So how can we sell that? Maybe we can sell a little bit of this like soccer pose. Now I've never played soccer before, so I have no idea. But let's say she's just kind of got this wider stance here. And she favors one leg over the other because that tends to be more natural for us, is we favor one leg over the other. But she is not ready to fight. She's a little bit more relaxed, which Colo, yes, the relaxed happy would make more contrast in the character. Exactly. So she's a little bit more relaxed. Well, if we think of line weights in a character, so what I mean by line weights is you have straights, C curves, and S curves. Straights are the most powerful. If you see a character with a straight like this one here, it makes them very excited, very energetic. C shapes, a little less energy, but still pretty strong. So for example here, this is a C shape in the body. Technically more like that. When you get S shapes, so something like this or like this, that is a character that isn't as dynamically strong, but it's also a little bit more relaxed. It's the whole body kind of like, think of an accordion kind of compressing in on itself. It's a different kind of relaxation. So maybe I'll try to push that a little bit in the character. Let's see. It might not work, but we'll kind of see how that feels, where her body is going to be a little bit more like this. Hip down on this side. And kind of like that. So now we get that S shape in the character. That might work. And her other leg maybe is kind of more forward. So she tends to stand a little bit further back on this leg, almost like she's ready to run forward at any time. Whereas she, we can exaggerate this here, leans forward in her posing. Her weight is more into her toes, as if she's ready to take a step back at any point. So even from the side, we would have a little contrast. And like, there's no right answer to this. I will say that right now. You can do whatever you want for your character. It's your shot. Do what feels right. So a much wider stance here. And let's say for the arms, let's kind of bring those down. Well, actually, before I get to the arms, for the body and torso, one thing I would like to try is a little bit of a lean forward. Oops. A little bit of a lean forward, and I don't want to do this. I want her to feel a little bit more kind of straight. Like if she works out a lot, if she kind of exercises, she's going to have that kind of straighter posture to her. So trying to exaggerate that a little bit. That leg goes forward. This, it would kind of, you get that natural twist in there. And Broken Tangent, hello! How's it going? Hope you're doing well. Not too much there. So something like that. Okay. Relax those shoulders. So she tends to be a little bit more relaxed. And what does she do with her hands? Is she kind of nervous and she brings her hands close in front of her? So for example, let's take that, and she could kind of keep her hands like forward in front of her, like she's afraid of afraid of like touching things. She doesn't want to bump into anything. She could be kind of going with the like that jock stereotype, the very like wide elbows, just kind of both arms out kind of thing, that kind of more heroic pose where the arms, like if you watch people who really work out a lot and they've got these huge arms, because of their muscles they can't really bring their hands back into the center. Does she have that kind of physique? Does she bring her hands back behind her, like she's afraid of, or she's trying to hide her nervousness? So it's a lot of choices that we have. Let's see. I'm actually going to change the head angle first because this is going to help give us that idea of who this character is. So for example, if she brings her head down in this case, let's actually get those eyes to not follow here. So I want aim on, follow off. Now she's looking in all the wrong places. So something like that. How would you go about putting hands in her pockets, or would you try and avoid that on this rig? I wouldn't try to avoid it. In most cases, I'm not a fan of putting hands in the pocket because it takes away something that we could be acting with. If you did want to put the hands in a pocket, and this goes for any rig, there's a few different ways you can do it. The easiest is, let's say I wanted to put the hand in the pocket here. Do something like this. I would just kind of put the hand into the hips. There's actually pockets here, so let's kind of put it there. And then create a polygon sphere. Put it at the hip. Create that bulge effect. And this is very simple. I'd shape it a little bit and then just add the material for the pants. So let's see if it's going to be Dana pants. There we go. There you go. Now you just shape it a little bit so that it's not a perfect sphere. So maybe stretch it out. Let's rotate it a little bit more like this. It kind of feels like it's got change it, and there you go. And then you constrain it to the hips. And that's it. Quick cheat. And then you could just animate the visibility of it or even the position of it to make it look like it grows or shrinks as the hand reaches into the pocket. So yeah, as long as it depends on the camera angle as well, because if we're looking at it from the back, that's going to be harder to cheat, but from the front, almost no one's going to notice. So yay. So let's take a look at the head position here. So if I kind of bring the head down here, this will make her look meeker, kind of weak. I don't really want her to feel weak. She's nervous, yes, but she's also confident in herself. Now this doesn't, like if I don't bring it up, this makes her feel snobbish. I don't want that feeling either. She's very, in the book, it's a character who is very upfront, very, and Kongal, thank you so much for the follow. Really appreciate that. This is a character who, if she makes a mistake, she'll admit it. If she has failures or limitations, she'll admit it. She is not good at talking. She is not socially... She hasn't trained well socially, but she's a very truthful person. So how can I sell that compared to this other person who never reveals anything about themselves? They are very personal and like private. Well, she's going to look more directly at people. When she looks at people, she's not going to look at them from the side like she's nervous and shy, which she is, but she's upfront and truthful. So this is going to help sell that. She's also kind of confident in her ability of like doing well in certain things. She studies hard, she works hard. So she's not going to have this kind of low angle to the head, I don't think, because that kind of gives the feeling that she's confrontational. It's like, just try me, come on, like starting to start a fight. Instead, it'll just be a slightly upper, like slightly higher angle. This way it's not just straight neutral forward, but just a little bit up, kind of just surveying the situation. Like she's ready to act. She's just kind of looking down ever so slightly. Not looking down her nose at people, but just a little bit. And then we can use the head angle to push the line of action of the body here. So this is where knowing your characters comes in very handy. If you know your character, you can really start to exaggerate these small elements and create a character that feels unique versus a character that is just the same as another character. Now, the arms. This is where the arms are a little tricky, because I do want to show a little bit of nervousness in her pose, but I don't want her to feel like really shy, which, like, for example, doing something like this tends to make the character feel kind of more shy, and she doesn't want to interact as much. Like, she could actually just stand relaxed, which could be a choice, where the arms are just kind of at her side. So she doesn't really have tension either way. Something like that. The problem with this is now we're kind of losing contrast with the character, because on the other character, because all I would have to do is bend this arm and it's very similar. So, like that. Do I want to do that? No. Because now even just doing that, you can see how they're starting to mirror each other. So now that I have two characters, I want to push this contrast between them. So now, if I would go with my other variation here with the arms crossed, then yeah, I could no problem have her with like their hands on her hips or something like that. How do I want her to be? I'm not really, for this character, I'm not really a fan of having her hold her own hand. Like holding her hands behind her. Ooh, that's a good one. What if her hand held the other? Or her one arm held the other? That's a good one. So not the hands holding each other, but maybe she crosses, she's got this nervous energy and she's crossing one arm across the other to kind of keep herself, I guess you could say, steady. I like that. That could work. Let's take this clavicle here and bring that forward. So she's just kind of, it's almost like she's got this nervous energy and she's holding herself down. So something like this, and then let's just move that arm forward a little bit. Something like that. So she's just kind of holding onto her own arm. And kind of lower that a little bit so it's a little bit more relaxed. And Aaron, thank you so much for the follow. So something like this, and then let's kind of get that hand just a little bit more kind of a neutral pose here. Maybe move that shoulder forward and down. This one's going to be a little higher. And I'm just going to take this thumb and relax it a little bit because it feels so weird being so straight. So something like that. Once again, are we polishing the poses? Not yet, because I could take a lot of time and start polishing the hands and all of that. But if I then find out that, you know, this pose isn't really working, I've just wasted a lot of time. The most I would do for hand poses is kind of just getting a slightly more natural default pose. So hands are not just straight and flat. Typically, our index finger tends to stay a little straighter, like that. And then the other fingers bend a little bit more. So just doing something like this, super quick, is a good way of just selling a little bit more of a neutral pose. So like that. So all of a sudden when we look at, there we go, at this hand, we're not just looking at a generic boring pose. It just feels nicer. For something like this, is there, I don't think there's a global like cup control or something like that. Or there's cup, which that's the metacarpals in the fingers, but there's no just curl. Well, I guess I could use these. But if I'm going to pose out even a quick pose, I'll just use the actual controls. That wrist should be straight here. Oops. Honestly, I should be posing that in IK. That'll make it a lot easier. But let's kind of quickly do that, and then just make sure I don't have anything else selected. Okay. Curl those fingers in. Just quickly. There we go. I say quickly and then I start polishing things. There we go. So, there we go. Suddenly, we've got characters. Now, we're not quite done yet. We need to go over her facial expressions. So, she's confident. She's a happy person. So, right away, happy person. Let's actually just give her a little bit of a smile. Now, yeah, let's do something like that. Not a big smile, so I don't want to go like super wide, but just kind of her neutral resting state is a little bit of a grin. Now, if she smiles, that means her lips are going to move up a little bit, and we might even get a little bit of tightness in the lips. So they're going to roll in a little bit. So roll in. We'll just do the top lip. And then I could even bring that lower lip up just a little bit here. You can see how it creates a little bit more tension in the lip. So her default is that there's a little tension in there. And if she smiles, that means that her teeth or her lips will actually come back in a little bit more there. And just Steph, thank you so much for the subscription. Aw, man, thanks so much. Really appreciate that. And Orawa, thank you so much for the follow. I think I missed that earlier. Thank you so much. So we've got the smile. Let's see. Now her main expression. I've got my drawings on the other side here. Let me actually bring them up here. So I'm just kind of looking like any drawings that I did as I was doing character tests. Do I feel like maybe I could try using or incorporating that? I think kind of the high eyebrows work a little bit. So she's curious, naturally curious. She's interested in what's going on around her. Now she might not be like fully like, oh my god, just way open. Maybe it's just kind of like one brow that's just a little bit more open than the other. So it's kind of giving that little bit of openness. All right. Now this is where I do I ever use a tablet or always a mouse? I'm actually using a tablet right now. I almost exclusively animate using a tablet, even in Maya. I never animate using a mouse ever. It's just uncomfortable to me and hurts my wrist. So yeah, it's always this. I do have a mouse, but I'll use that for modeling or rigging or things that I need a little bit more precise, like I need to click on one specific vertice. Anything else, I use a tablet. Now, here's a little bit of character dynamic that I have to think about. Does she naturally like what she looks at, or does she naturally dislike what she looks at? Kind of neutral stance. So what I mean by this is, for example, think of a kid and you off to the side, you give them a plate of cookies. What's going to happen with their face? They're going to go, cookies. And that side near the cookies is going to open up. Yes. Now, same kid, different situation. You put a plate of broccoli in front of them on that same side. They're not going to go, broccoli. No. They're going to go, oh, broccoli. And they're going to close that side of their face. Oh, no, I don't like that. So here, if she's looking, technically a little screen left. She's looking to the left side of the screen. If I bring this brow down, that creates the natural inclination that whatever she's looking at by default, she's closed off to it. She doesn't want to interact with things. That's not really the character I want to go with here. This is someone who is, yes, socially awkward, but she wants to interact with things. That's the whole point, is that she wants to try new things. So I'll reverse the brows. I'll make sure that that brow in the direction that she's looking is a little bit more open. A little bit more like that. The mouth, same thing. I'm going to reverse the smile so that we get that nice contrapposto where this smile is a little higher, which opens up the other side just a little bit, like so. I can even exaggerate that by rotating the mouth and just bring it over to the side slightly. So it just kind of opens up the side that she's looking towards. Let's actually take the nose and rotate that as well, just a little. Create that connection. And then I can even take the nostril and just kind of bring it up a little bit to show that the corner of the mouth pushing up there. Okay. So we've got that. Very, very basic. Let's try to push the eyelids. So, upper lid here. Let's open it up just a little bit. She's curious about what she's seeing. So her eyes aren't going to be kind of closed. They might actually be a little bit more open than you would normally think of. Now, why is this doing... Not doing much at all. Interesting. I'll have to check that out. So I could try that. Or what if she's more of a relaxed person? I might close the eyes a little bit more. So she just kind of has a little bit more of a naturally relaxed state. Now, if I do this, I would also want to take the corners of the eyes and move those up just a little bit, like that, just to kind of keep the shape of the eye a little bit more natural to her design. So a little bit more like that. Or do I like the wide-eyed, like, she sees things and it's almost like a childlike innocence of excitement and wonder of the world around her. I kind of like that personally for this character. The idea that she's just really, how to put this, you can almost say she's just a good person. And good in the sense of, just push the cheeks there. Good in the sense that regardless of the situation, she's happy. She's a very happy person. A very positive influence, I guess you could say. So, how can we exaggerate that? So let's push that outer corner of the cheeks up a little bit there. Outer corner of the cheeks here. So by pushing the tightness on the outer edge of the cheeks, it creates a little bit more of a smile effect to the face. And let's actually shape the eyelid just a little bit here. Now this is starting to go into a little polishy stuff. Again, you don't have to go this far, but when it comes to eyes are so subtle that this is one of the few times where I might actually just go in and do a little bit of extra polish just to really get the expression the way I want it to be. So maybe something like that. Super quick. There we go. Suddenly, we go from this, where the characters are obviously two different characters, but they feel the same. They feel default. And by going through all of the things that we talked about, who is this character? How can we sell that in a pose? So that when the audience looks at this character, right now, these could be anyone. This could be a brute. This could be a big a person who's just ready to punch anyone in the face, or it could be the tamest little shy person who doesn't want to hurt a fly and super careful about everything and always super gentle. Or maybe, again, going back to the jock idea, just really proud and maybe like we go with the arrogant jock, that king of high school that just walks around and struts all over the place. Or maybe they're a jock, that kind of like very sportsy person, but they're super kind, the kind of person where, oh, they see someone getting bullied, they're gonna walk in and separate the fight and protect the little guy. They're always there to help pick someone up, or help, like, oh, you dropped something, here you go. Oh, you need to do something, here you go. We can push that in the pose, so that instead of just getting default, we get character. And do that exploration before you start animating. It doesn't honestly take that long. Like, this took about an hour, I think, since I started, to do both of these poses, all while explaining the whole process. A pose like this, it really, half an hour, 15 minutes, something like that, and do a few iterations. Once you do it like one version, it's not hard to push to a different version. So for example, let's just try on this version here with her. Let's make sure I set a key. That'll help. Boop. Key. Oh, and make sure I deselect first. I always make that mistake of not deselecting before I set a key. let's just take this hand pose and we'll reset both arms. And just to see, how does it feel when she brings her or keeps her arms behind her? What kind of character does this give? So let's make sure the arms are back far enough away so we get the right perspective. Now, because she's doing this, her elbows would actually straighten out a little bit. So you get a little bit more of that. And then her shoulders, well, if we bring them down, it'll make her feel more relaxed. If we bring them up, she'll be a little bit more excited about things. So this makes her feel a little bit more kind of excitable just by doing this. And what if, let's take the head. I'm just going to try a different position. Like maybe she's a little bit more like this. Very different character than this. Suddenly, it's a little bit more shy, a little bit more timid. If you go even further, maybe a little flirty. It changes who this character is. If you bring it up, it kind of looks a little bit more fun and like she's ready to pull a prank on someone at any point. You go further and maybe twist the head up this way. And it's like she's looking down her nose at the person. We change the character a lot just by tweaking these poses. So try this. Try these variations and see which one feels more like your character. The character you want to be in the story. For example, what if her pose, she kept her foot behind her a little bit more? Now you can really see how that changes to much more nervous. She doesn't, like, everything is self-contained. Everything about her is trying to make itself smaller and less seen. Something like that. Different character than that. So do these and do a lot more. How does a character sit? This is probably something I'll do in tomorrow's stream because unfortunately I'm probably gonna have to go pretty soon for today's stream. Just in terms of I have work to do. But maybe tomorrow, how will these characters sit in a chair? We'll explore different variations and see how that works. And then once we have those, once we have the different, this is another one I would do expression variation. So just focus on the face and what does this character look like when they're happy or when they're sad, when they're angry. Do emotional variations. And the cool thing with those is you can always save all of this out. So for example, let's say, I love these poses. Let's start animating our actual shot. I'll just take the entire pose, open up Studio Library, which is a free plugin anyone can get. Let me actually get you guys the link for it. Studio Library. You'd think I'd have it in my bookmarks by now, but okay. Here it is, right there. Free plugin for Maya. And did it open? Takes a little bit to open on my system. You get that, and you can save the pose into Studio Library. So here are, for example, some variations I did on some default character poses for another rig. You can have eye poses, hand poses. I did a default pose for the Link rig. some default walk cycles. You can save animation in here. So a default cycle for Zelda in this case. So if ever I need to animate a shot with Zelda, hey there, boop, done. So to save a pose, just select all the controls that you want to save. If you have a GUI picker, just make sure to select all the controls there. And let's create a new folder here. So this is going to be Dana. Okay. And let's do a new pose. So right here, I still have everything selected. I can click here to create a thumbnail of the pose. So let's zoom in here. Kind of frame that up. I could even get that neutral in there. So yeah, we will know exactly what it is. And let's call it neutral. And right here, we have 168 objects selected. That just lets me know that I have some controls selected. Hit save. There you go. Now, if ever I need to apply that pose, so let's say, for example, right here, frame 1. You know, we need to apply the default pose. So imagine we've just referenced the character into the scene. Select all your controls, neutral pose, hit apply, and it'll put it in. Now, just make sure your namespace here is set to from selection, and then it'll apply right to it. So boop. And there we go. I can even, let's see if I can undo that in one go. There we go. I can even go, you know, let's apply it not 100%. Let's kind of just do 50%. Now that's going to get some weird stuff in here. But when you're doing expressions, what's really nice is you can go happy and make a happy pose, but maybe I just want a little happiness in there. You can just kind of add a little bit of a smile or a little bit of a frown and mix and match between different poses. So there you go. So Studio Library is super powerful. And what this also means is that all of this work that you do in this character creation process, this character exploration of finding these default poses and expressions for these characters are not pointless. It's not like, well, I did all of this work and now I have to redo it all. No, once you get into your shot, oh, this character has to be angry at this point. Take that angry pose and use it as a start for your character. This way you're not having to reset the pose all the time from zero. It actually makes you work faster. So why not? Using namespace allows you to apply a pose to a different character as long as names coincide. Yes. So for example, I could have two of the same rig. So the Amy rig and another Amy rig, and both of their namespaces are different. That's whenever you create a reference of a character, they'll come in with a namespace. In this case, it's whatever's before the colon. So Amy colon right there. And it allows you to apply or have multiple of the same rig in the same scene and use tools like Studio Library to pose to apply things to one of the rigs and not another rig. Namespaces are very important. So for example, I've got two chairs here. Where are they? Right there. I was setting it up for having the character sit. And by default, when you bring in the chair, it's like shot ready underscore something, colon, and then the actual name of the rig, which doesn't make it very easy to know which chair is which. So I just changed the namespace here. So we have chair underscore Amy, chair underscore Dana. Now I know which one's which. So if ever I don't have something visible on screen here and I need to know which chair I've got selected, well, there it is. It's in the name. And the way you can change your namespace is just go to File, Reference Editor, and just change it right here. So by default, when you bring in the Amy rig, it's a really long name. I think it's Amy underscore rig underscore V1.21 and then the rig. I just need it to be Amy. That's all I need. This way, when I select a control, I don't have a huge long name that's filling in the whole channel box up here. That's pointless. So, yeah. There we go. Her head angle, I'm not a fan of. It keeps like catching me. And I wonder if maybe it's just the eye direction. It needs to be looking a little bit more forward. No, there's something with the head angle. That's a little better already. So there we go. So yeah, that's pretty much character tests. And like I said, tomorrow I'm going to be doing more of these. Basically just going through and trying to figure out who these characters are. And the main reason for this is, like I was saying at the beginning of the stream, what I'm going to be working on is a whole sequence of shots. And it's going to be a pretty long story. With that said, I might actually be working on this with a bunch of other animators. We're doing a collaboration on this so that, for example, if I try to animate this, it would be here for the next year because it's probably going to end up being pretty long. So if that's the case and I'm going to be working with other people, I want them to know what the characters are. I don't want to go, here, animate this shot. And they go, okay, sure. I'll just make the character smile. And then I go, hey, that's not the smile I want. No, that just makes it a horrible working environment because no one's on the same page. So by doing these character tests, by doing these kind of mock-ups of what the characters are like in their default poses, it allows people on the team to know. Gotta do the dance. And whatever, Jaylene, thank you so much for the subscription. Thank you so much. So by doing this, it allows everyone on the team to be on the same page. By doing the storyboarding, by doing all of this work first, it makes it so we're all working together to make a cohesive project versus hoping for the best. And kind of bringing it around to the original topic, which was when you're boarding a sequence, even if it's a small one, and you just sound like an angry Italian plumber. It's perfect. There you go. It's starting to come out. I'm French, so going for the Italian, it always ends up being a little weird. Like the big problem I have is whenever I say, now I have to think about it. How it's Mario. Yes, Mario. So Mario. I always say Mario. If I'm not careful, it's me, Mario. It's like, no, that's horrible. Which you'd think, because in French it's Mario. I don't know, it's weird. Every time I say it, it's like, oh, it sounds so flat. It's supposed to be high and happy, Mario. So when you're working on your own sequence, for example, if you're an animation mentor and you're going to start class 4 or class 5, especially class 5 or 6, because you might work on a sequence there as well, try to think of all of this stuff. Try to think of not just the character, like we were doing. Sounds Canadian. Yeah, that's true. It has the A, the Mario. Got to put the EH in there somewhere. So what is the storyboarding program you're using? This is Storyboarder, which is totally free. It is a great program. I showed it a little bit earlier in the stream, but what I love about this is that it actually has a shot generator, which basically means that all of these shots, I'm not very good at drawing, especially perspective and stuff. So you can actually open up a shot generator, which lets you take elements, reposition them, get all your camera work in there. Do you want to animate, for example, I'll select this character and I want a close-up of this character. Okay, choose close-up. It gets you in the range. Move it down. Okay, maybe I want an eye level shot. Okay, and make sure I actually select the right character here. So close-up, maybe a low angle, and then I can reposition it. So it changes all of the things that I want, and then I can just add it into my boards. Once I have it in there, I can just create another board here, and like I did previously, just use that as a base. And okay, I maybe want the character to lean forward a little bit more and start drawing that character in. So it's just a great way to start getting those ideas in without having to try and do it all by hand. Because especially like this shot here, this is going to be a 3-character shot. So I've got 1 character, I want 2 others in the back, potentially we'll see how it goes. How do you set up the perspective? How do you put this in place? Well, I created a basic premise and then I drew the character over top, and you'll notice I collapsed them a little bit more. I might make them a little bit bigger, we'll see. But it basically just allows you to block all of that in very quickly. And the other thing that I love about this is if you have a script or a screenplay, which I do. So for anyone who wasn't here at the beginning of the shot, this is actually a test that I'm doing where I read a chapter in a book, or a few paragraphs in a book, that I really loved the subtle the subtle expression changes in there. It's a lot of subtext through this whole segment of the book. Basically, the characters just having an inner monologue to themselves. They're communicating with another through text, even though the other person's in the same room. And it's just a very interesting back and forth between these characters. And I figured, this is really cool. I wonder if I can get that in animation and get that moment to feel the same, to get all of the same subtext and same emotional beats, but without dialogue or without like reading it. So I took that section of the book and then I rewrote it as if it was a screenplay. And the way I did this, do I still have the link here? I think I do. Is here. So if you're interested in learning about screenplays, I would recommend checking out Studio Binder. It's got a whole thing of how to write it and why you do it. But then also check out Fountain.io. This is basically a formatting script that you can write in anything, on Notepad, Google Docs, whatever. And you just write your screenplay in whatever free program you want and save it as a .fountain file. And then I basically imported it into here, and you'll notice that it created all my shots for me and all of the different sections. So I've got all of my information brought in by default once I wrote it out, which is awesome. It even color codes the different types of shots for me, which is really cool. So these two are medium shots, so they're both yellow, which is really nice. So by doing that, and all of that's free, you can start to storyboard a little bit faster. And the reason this is helpful is now I can very quickly go through this and see if my story is reading before I even start to go into animation. And then I do a whole bunch of character studies, so I was showing this earlier. Really trying to think of who these characters are, how to push poses, how to push expressions. I'm not very good at drawing, I will say that. Most of my drawings are like stick figures like this, but it's enough to get the idea across, at least to me, so that I can start planning things out. So you can see this pose here. Well, that's very close to this pose. I could actually exaggerate that pose a little bit more. This expression here, this was something I did in a few minutes, just kind of trying to see how flexible the rig was. I did this yesterday at some point, I think. Was it yesterday? I think so. And just trying to see if I could get the character into the pose that I wanted her to be in, close enough. And then just some quick expression tests. See how squishy the face was. So, yeah, doing tests like this is huge. And once again, I highly recommend, if you're going to be doing a sequence, do all of this. You don't have to go as far. It depends on how complex you want to go with it. But by at least thinking things out, by thinking of the camera language you want to sell in your shot, it's going to make a huge difference in the final product. You're not going to just be winging it, which in animation, it's hard enough the way, like just animation in general. You don't want to have to wing it and hope for the best. That's too much time and too much effort that is going to be wasted, I guess you could say.